Yeti. Okay. Audio is working. Okay. All right. Well, we save that. There's a couple of things I want to do. I want to make sure my YouTube thing is working. All right. Now I want to open up Firefox. Now I want to open up Firefox. Now I want to open up Firefox. Sorry about that. I want to play it because I'm hiding this audio source right now. So let's test out some music. Let's see. Just something. Firefox. Now I want to open up Fire. I want to open up Fire. I want to open up Fire. Hello. Hello. Okay, hello. Cool. Now let's test Twitch. Now let's test Twitch. Now let's test Twitch. Now let's test Twitch. All right, I think that's working. Actually, I can't tell. It is working. Cool. Holy crap, we split our audio, guys. That is actually amazing. Let's turn off the preview here to eat up less resources. Let's go ahead and close this out because why not? And then, yeah. All right. Now we're going to learn Dispriest. My audio is okay. It's a mixer at. Okay, we got Chrome pretty low. Okay. Oh, yeah. There's one more thing that I want to do. I want to check Twitch test stream. Twitch inspector. So we want to keep this up just to make sure we're not having any problems, any issues. We'll just put this in a different tab. It's fine. And then we'll see if it fucks up. So right now we're multi-streaming and everything seems to be working. I just need to maybe check. Let's see. Make sure this is never covered. I want to do this like that. Okay. Why do I have Shift 6 as my barrier? That doesn't seem right. That seems wrong. Dude, barrier looks so weird now. What the fuck? Do you have game sound? Yeah, we do. Okay. All right. Pretty sure I got some keybinds somewhere here. Info. All right. Let's set up our bars. Because everything is fucked. That's right, I'm playing MoP, dude. Hey, Doink, what's up, man? Hello. I spent like 2 hours setting up a bunch of like stream stuff. So hopefully it's all working. If If it crashes like in the first 5 minutes, I'm gonna be really sad. But I did some cool stuff. I like split up all my audio so I can play music if I want to on Twitch, and it'll like use a separate audio track for the VOD and on YouTube, which that's cool. So now I can listen to whatever I fucking want, and only YouTube can't hear it. Okay. So first things first, we are going to set up some keybinds. So, I think Archangel, I usually have Shift R. Oh yeah, let's pick a spec. So we are disciplined right now. And what talents do I want to use? So I kind of want to, I've been like wanting to watch a video basically. Kind of go over like talents and stuff. Double Slug's got an hour-long video that I think we're going to watch. While I kind of just like casually set some stuff up. So let me maybe do that. So Chrome properties. Complete discipline guide. Then we will unlock it. We will transform. Actually, do we need to? Yeah, we probably want to full screen this. I mean, why not? Transform. Fit the screen. It's all fucked up because of the bar.
Pandaria Classic, Discipline Priest will be a highly desirable spec for both 10 and 25 man rating, bringing very strong single target damage, smart healing, absorbs, pre-shielding, great utility in CDs. In 5-mans and challenge modes, the spec is similarly very strong, where that single target damage
Hopefully you guys can hear that.
Valuable.
Is it hearable? I hope so. Let's actually test. Hearable? I hope so.
As well as the cooldowns you bring.
Hearable?
As well as the cooldowns.
Cool, it works. Okay.
For both the group and the tank. In PvP, however, this is the very first expansion in all the classic expansions where Holy Priest actually outshines Discipline in PvP. If you play Discipline Priest in original Myths of Pandaria or potentially on private servers, the post-nerf version we're getting in MoP Classic will tend a little bit more
lock in
Spirit Shell and defensive playstyle than spamming Atonement. A little bit more choices to be made, global to global. So overall, while the healer is significantly nerfed, it's still very powerful and I think overall more fun to play in the version of Myths of Pandaria that we're going to be playing in Classic. With the new talent system that we get in Myths of Pandaria being choice rows, a lot of the stuff we previously would have gotten in the talent trees in Wrath or Cataclysm, we now just get for free baked into the toolkit. And there's some big changes in here that are well worth understanding. So first and most importantly, we have Atonement. This is totally different than the retail implementation. If you are coming from retail and you didn't play Cataclysm, what this does in MoP is takes all the damage you deal with your single target discipline spell, so Smite.
Who did this video that you're watching? Do they do something for each class? This is Double Zug. He's kind of a healer. He's kind of like a healer. I don't know what you want to call that. He does healing stuff. I don't think he does any like DPS stuff. So he's probably going to make guides for all the healers, it looks like. Pre-patch healer guide for MoP Classic. So he's got a Discipline Priest guide. He's got a Resto Shaman guide. He made a Mistweaver Monk guide. He's pumping out some guides, dude. I want a Hunter guide. Yep. Well, I don't know. If I find one, I'll let you know.
In Myths of Pandaria Classic, Discipline Priest will be...
Why did it just restart?
Your AoE healing is going to more consistent mechanics, and Absorb not incredibly powerful. Slight amount in the MoP changes, but not really enough to make this like not incredibly powerful. The second aspect of this that's insane is that the healing is Absorb, and Absorb is just very powerful because it's...
Wait, so... Oh, okay, hold on. I must have missed the Atonement part.
Implementation if you are coming from retail and you didn't play Cataclysm. What this does in MoP is takes all the damage you deal with your single target discipline spell, so Smite, Holy Fire, both the same as Cataclysm, but now also Penance will do smart healing as well.
Penance works now.
like aggressive form. These will do 70% of the damage in 40 yards around the target, and it will smart heal, so it will always heal the lowest target player. So nice to have this baseline. This is so core to the toolkit, though previously you never really would have not taken this in a talent build. Next we have Borrowed Time. You'll be familiar with this if you played Wrath or Cataclysm. This just, whenever we press a power word shield, gives us a 15% haste buff on our next spell. Meaningfully in Mists of Pandaria, this has changed that if you use a channeled spell, it will consume the buff, where previously you could, cast a penance, cast an instant like and, it wouldn't consume it. You would only be consumed by casted spells like, Flash Heal or Prayer of Healing. Next, we have Divine Aegis. This is radically changed in Mists of Pandaria in a way that's like very significant. So whereas previously what would happen if you crit is you just get 30% of that crit with some scaling from Mastery in excess added to the target. Now, Divine Aegis completely replaces our critical effects.
That's crazy.
So if we crit there, you see it crit for 61k, and I also got 70k absorb. And if I flash heal normally, the normal flash heal is 60k. So there's no extra healing on crits. All of that extra healing is converted into an absorb shield that lasts 15 seconds and can be refreshed by subsequent crits. This is incredibly powerful and will do a huge amount of our healing, and is a big reason.
So is that worse or better? Because before you were just getting added healing, now you're just getting a shield. But I guess the ability to like prep for damage is like, it's even stronger now. So instead of getting like a smaller shield, you just get a bigger shield. But it's like, it's replacing the actual healing.
Why we scale very effectively with both Critical Strike and Mastery, because Mastery now increases our healing directly and also our absorb. So our critical strikes will double dip on this. So something I'll talk about again in the stat section, but crit and mastery both very powerful for Discipline Priest, as was nerfed a slight amount in the MoP changes, but not really enough to make this like not incredibly powerful. The second aspect of this that's insane is that the healing is absorb, and absorb is just very powerful.
Absorb is OP.
Its overhealing is so low, and because it gives EHP to the raid, so you can use this to pre-shield mechanics, especially when your critical strike gets a lot higher, where your AoE healing is going to more consistently put this up on more players. Next we have our pushback. This is just passive on like all the casters. We get 70% reduced. Divine Fury, we now just have free hit rating on all of our spells.
Oh, cool.
This does not, however,
so we don't need a glyph anymore. What does it not affect?
Our shadow spells, so things
Oh yeah, of course.
like Shadow Word Pain can still miss. Evangelism, this is the same as it is in Cataclysm, stacking up when we cast Holy Fire, Penance, and Smite, and this will just reduce the mana cost and increase the damage and healing of all of our core atonement spells significantly. Not something you'd really have to pay attention to. It will just passively stack up and increase your healing a lot, although it will interact with a cooldown we'll talk about later. Focused Will, this is actually a very sort of sleeper, super important change to our passives. Now this will proc like in raid, in PvE, and dungeons. Whenever you take damage greater than 10% of your health, you will get a 15% DR for 8 seconds, and this stacks
really
up
nice.
to 2 times, so you can get 30%.
Before, I feel like Priest was like one of the more squishier classes, and this was a talent that like you wouldn't really take unless you're PvPing. So this is kind of cool that it's just going to be like a baseline thing now.
DR. This is an incredible defensive layer and totally passive, so you don't have to like press a defensive, you just get this. We're no longer super squishy. We're actually pretty tanky now. Next I want to talk about Grace. So Grace is very similar again to previous editions of the spec. However, in MoP it's buffed, so instead of, I believe it was like 4% in Wrath and 8% in Cataclysm, now it's 10% per stack, so total of 30% increased healing. This is very strong.
That's a lot.
It's going to increase all of our smart healing from atonement, like any kind of healing you do to the tank.
30% healing. That's crazy, dude.
And this is something that's going to make...
Oh, is it personal, though? Because before I think it was global.
Us sometimes press Penance, which of course will apply 3 stacks with 1 cast, defensively rather than offensively. Next we have Mastery. So as I mentioned before, Mastery now doesn't just affect absorbs, it also will scale our direct healing at 1/2 of the value.
Oh, that's
Next
good.
is Rapture. This is actually a massive change to the spec overall, whereas in Cataclysm, Rapture would give you positive mana returns when it procced, and in Wrath of the Lich King, you could stack this up to basically have infinite mana whenever there was like big bursty damage. In Mists of Pandaria, this is very nerfed, where when the Rapture procs has the same cooldown of 12 seconds, it will just refund the mana cost of just the Power Word Shield, so effectively this gives you a free Power Word Shield every 12 seconds, but our spec is no longer going to be structured around maximum value out of this as a core mana regen mechanic. It's just a nice passive healing thing. Spiritual healing, this is just the passive that gives us more healing on our spell.
Sorry, I got a little distracted there. Okay, so Rapture. Let's hear him talk about Rapture. So we know about the mastery thing.
Are direct healing at 1/2 of the value. Next is Rapture. This is actually a massive change to the spec overall, whereas in Cataclysm, Rapture would give you positive mana returns when it procced, and in Wrath of the Lich King, you could stack this up to basically have infinite mana whenever there was like big bursty damage. In Mists of Pandaria, this is very nerfed where when the Rapture procs has the same cooldown of 12 seconds, it will just refund the mana cost of just the Power Word Shield, so effectively this gives you a free Power Word Shield every 12 seconds, but our spec is no longer
That's not as good as it was before. Instantly refund 100% of its mana cost, but that's pretty nice to be able to have just a free powered shield. What is this?
going to be structured.
Hold on a second. I want to see my spell book. Rapture. Removes the cooldown on powered shield and reduces its mana cost by 25%. That's just a Disc Priest thing. Okay. Let's see.
Around maximum value out of this as a core mana regen mechanic. It's just a nice passive healing thing. Spiritual healing, this is just the passive that gives us more healing on our spells than Shadow Priests when we spec healing. Next we have Strength of Soul. This is a nice add because previously we didn't have the talent points to really take this in most builds. What this will do is cause our single target heals, so like Flash Heal, Greater Heal, to reduce the duration of the weak soul on the target by 2 seconds.
That's nice.
Lastly, we have Train of Thought. Again, another nice add because we wouldn't really have the points to grab this in Cataclysm. Now we just get it for free. What this does is makes our Greater Heal reduce the cooldown of Inner Focus by 5 seconds. The most important part of this is actually the second part, which is that whenever we smite, the cooldown of our penance is reduced by 0.5
Wow, that's
seconds.
actually
So
sick.
you can see if I put my penance on cooldown and start smiting, that cooldown is going to jump up 0.5 seconds.
That's pretty cool.
Each time we smite, which is very important. Penance is a very, very powerful spell now, both offensively and defensively. One last thing to mention here is that Divine Aegis will now allow our Power Word Shield to crit. So this is nice. It allows Power Word Shield to scale with more of our secondary statistics. However, where this would be insane in something like Wrath of the Lich King, where Power Word Shield is a lot of your healing, in Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, Power Word Shield is not that strong, and so this isn't going to be like massive like it would be again in something like Wrath or even WoD, where we're spamming a lot more Power Word Shield. Alright, now that we've gone over the class and passive changes, I'm going to go through the whole toolkit, talk over each spell individually. This is going to be a long one, so if you aren't interested in the nitty-gritty here, you can just skip to the priority and rotation guide, and you'll be able to understand the spec perfectly fine from just that. So real quick before I go into the spells, I'm going to be referencing the spreadsheets. I have one for each healer spec. They're on my Discord and the Sheets channel. If you want, you can go in there and make a copy of them, mess around with them yourself. I'm going to make a separate video on how to use these later on, but these just have simple models of all the spells, a little bit of a sim, and some utilities to calculate your stat weights based on your gear. Alright, so let's start with the basics here. We have Heal, Greater Heal, and Flash Heal are the core 3 heal structure we've inherited from Cataclysm. Similar to Cataclysm, Heal is basically unusable, and Greater Heal and Flash Heal both have their spots. With
so that's good. So I could basically, that was one thing that I didn't really know when I was first starting off as a priest, is Heal going to be useful? It's basically just completely unusable. There's no real reason.
Being efficient and Flash Heal being fast and powerful. So what do the numbers tell us about these 3 spells? Well, first of all, Heal is just not even really that efficient, despite being so weak and so long of cast time, so basically never worth casting. This spell is kind of designed around Holy, allowing it to refresh, renews, and be boosted by Chakra, so for Discipline, it's just very unusable.
Maybe it would be worth me keeping a keybind so that I can have that structure between swapping Holy and Discipline if I want to. Because I might want to swap to Holy, because I know that Holy has some benefits, right? There's probably going to be encounters where I'm going to want to play Holy Priest or something, or it's just going to be really strong to be Holy Priest, and that would be better to actually play, just be able to flex Holy.
As for Flash Heal and Greater Heal, these are pretty inefficient. Both Greater Heal and Flash Heal both kind of being balanced around you having 3 stacks of Grace. With 3 stacks of Grace, they're relatively comparable to other specs spot healing, with Flash Heal being around the sort of 8.6 HPM range with full Grace, and Greater Heal being the 13 range with full Grace, and without Grace being 6.6 and 10 HPM respectively. These spells just do not compete with other healers like, you know, Holy Paladin, Resto Shaman. They're just going to do much more efficient like spot and single target healing than us with these basic spells. So ideal play, we won't really be pressing too many of all three of these buttons, basically
Okay.
zero heal. However, our big single target heals, Flash Heal and Greater Heal, do interact positively with Spirit Shell, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of plays how it plays now, where most of the time we are shielding, we are penancing, Holy Fire, Smite, you know, that prayer mending. So it doesn't seem like too much is different here. Greater heal is kind of useful, like if I really need to pump out some tank healing or something, or if there's not really an opportunity to use prayer of healing.
Give them
So-
some sort of like niche and situational usability as tank heals. Next we have Binding Heal. This is very fast cast time, same as Flash Heal, 1.5 second base cast time. It's actually cheaper than Flash Heal in this version of the game, and also cheaper than Greater Heal at 16,000 mana cost. And similar to previous versions of the game, this will just heal both you and the target. It actually is quite mana efficient, especially if you have Grace on one of
This is kind of the same like take really as the Cataclysm version of Binding Heal. Like it's just a really efficient spell to do if you're healing 2 targets here.
target. So if you're binding healing off the tank or something, it does, you know, like 12 HPM and has a very high healing per cast time. You can see it's actually about as mana efficient as Greater Heal, but much higher healing per cast time. So situationally, Binding Heal can be very strong if both you and the target are taking damage. However, if you're at full HP, this is just obviously not worth casting. It is lower than Prayer of Healing in terms of both like healing per cast time and healing per mana, quite significantly.
Okay. But that's only if Prayer of Healing is hitting 5 targets.
So in situations where you can get good effect on Prayer of Healing, you'll want to be spamming that over something like a Binding Heal. All right, leaving the Atonement spells for last, let's talk about...
Is Prayer of Healing still group based? I need to check. I assume so. That's always something I found kind of weird. Like, Prayer of Healing heals the friendly target's party members within 30 yards. Okay. And it's still 30-yard range. It'd be nice if they could, if there was like a glyph that would give this a bigger range.
Power Word Shield next. So Power Word Shield is relatively cheap in this version of the game. It's only 14,000 mana, so about the same cost as a Binding Heal, less mana cost than a Flash or a Greater Heal significantly. It still retains the 50% nerf duration from Wrath of the Lich King it had in Kata of 15 seconds versus 30 seconds, which means that we can't really pre-shield this as effectively as we did in Wrath. Power Word Shield also gets a buff to its scaling in the late game, now benefiting from Critical Strike, which is one of the stats we're going to be stacking. It's just, you know, going to scale a lot better than in Cataclysm, where one of our main stats just did nothing for this spell. If we look at the math, Power Word Shield is actually pretty good healing per cast time and HPM, and you can see that it's actually significantly ahead of all of our other like
Per
single
mana?
target spot heals, Greater Heal, Binding Heal, Flash.
This is a crazy little sheet here. I love when they do this thing because I love knowing the numbers of mana efficiency and healing per cast time. Like this is such good info.
Heal, Greater Heal edging it out slightly if you have
Dang, so Halo, Divine Star, Halo, Divine Star. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. Penance defensive. What does penance defensive mean?
Grace.
Oh, penance as like a heal and not like offensive. Okay. That's weird that like he would frame it like that. Cascade, prayer of mending. So prayer of mending. So wow. So penance is still OP. So penance is like healing per mana is like crazy, it looks like. And then we've got healing per cast time. So what are these ones in the blue and the light blue? Or are those like, I don't really understand.
But this means that Power Word Shield is actually going to be a very powerful emergency spot heal for us, and is definitely much better than something like Flash Heal in most situations as an emergency heal. However, compared to, again, other specs that are very, very powerful at spot healing, it's still, you know, not super efficient. But the fact that it's all absorb and instant cast means that it still has a really nice utility as a spot heal. So overall, I would say Power Word Shield is in a better place than in Cataclysm. However, it's not so much better that you want to be actively pressing this. You're still just going to be using this on CD with Rapture and as an emergency spot heal. All right, so next let's talk about Prayer of Mending. This is a very cheap
Goated
spell.
spell.
It has a 10-second cooldown on MoP and about like half as much mana cost.
You know, one of my favorite things about playing a priest is prayer mending. And whenever you can get like a lot of value out of prayer mending, it feels so fucking good. You just throw out a prayer mending and it's just a ding, 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 ding. And it's just like, oh my gosh, bro. When you get the full 5 bounces like so fast before your 10 seconds are up, and like that is one of the most satisfying feelings about playing priest is just prayer mending value.
As a flash heal, this spell is just mathematically very powerful. It's super mana efficient and does a lot of healing if you get, 3, 4, 5 plus bounces. It also has access to a glyph, which will dramatically boost the healing of the first bounce, but reduce the charges by 1. The glyph doesn't really reduce its efficiency or healing that much if you get full bounces, but it dramatically increases the first bounce, obviously, and with that glyph, just 1 bounce palm is actually more efficient healing and relatively similar healing per cast time to something like a greater heal on the tank. So similar to Cataclysm, this spell is very spammable and well worth casting. Even at low bounces, however, to get full value, you do want to
So
wait
we are kind of feeling like it's almost the same playstyle here, if I'm really... Well, I mean, besides the fact that now I can penance offensively, now I can Holy Fire instantly, which is going to be so fucking nice. Oh my god, I can't wait to use Feathers. Feathers are going to be so fucking sick. Bro, I'm really hyped to play a priest. Like, Hunter is going to be fun, but I feel like playing a priest is just going to be so cool. What is this? Double dips, 25% increased healing, passive on private servers. Oh, it's probably not the case for here.
all those charges to be expended before you re-up the spell. So just a nice instant we can press on cooldown to get some cheap tank healing. That will also dramatically increase in value on like rot fights with taking raid damage. Paramending crits will also apply Divine Aegis, so this does scale with like all of our stats the same as all of our other heals. Speaking of cheap instants, let's talk about Renew next. So Renew is actually relatively efficient, especially if the target has Grace on it and you have enough haste to get an extra tick. However, we want to run very low haste on.
Wow, Renew. So what is he saying here? Renew is like efficient?
Since let's talk about Renew next. So Renew is actually relatively efficient, especially if the target has Grace on it and you have enough haste to get an extra tick. However, we want to run very low haste on Discipline, so you're going to be getting baseline ticks, and so Renew is just like not really worth casting. However, if you are like in a situation where you're moving and you have no ability to do any of the spells that are castable while moving, like Holy Fire, Power, Shield, your palm's on cooldown, it can be correct sometimes in very corner situations to press Renew on the tank. However, similar to
yeah, that kind of sounds pretty similar to how I already play it. Like Renew, if I don't have access to any instant casts and I need to press like something that's like actually going to heal a target, then yeah, it could be Renew.
Cataclysm, with correct play, you should have like basically 0 casts of this on most fights. Between 0 and 1 casts will end up being correct. Prayer of Healing still retains a lot of the clunkiness it had in Cataclysm and previous expansions. It still has a 30-yard radius around the target and only heals party members. And again, that 2.5 second base cast time being quite long. It has a very low mana cost in Mists of Pandaria, 1350, so
that's interesting.
Effectively the same mana cost as a Power Word.
What the fuck? Prayer of Healing and Power Word Shield the same mana cost?
Shield. The main change from Cataclysm to MoP for Prayer of Healing is that it's no longer guaranteed to proc Divine Aegis, even on non-crits.
That is a big one. I feel like that is a big one, dude.
Also, the interaction that worked in Kata, where if you crit with Prayer of Healing, it would like double apply Divine Aegis, so you could double dip on crits with POH. That no longer works. So that means Prayer of Healing is going to be used a lot more reactively than proactively, where instead of like using it to pre-shield damage, we're going to be...
Honestly, I like that. I think that is good because at some point, you kind of just become a Prayer of Healing bot. Like, I feel like the fights that I enjoyed the most were the ones where I had to really play smart with my Prayer of Healing and I couldn't get like full value out of it all the time. And the fight that comes to mind is like Ragnaros. It's like, wow, okay, I can't really do a lot of Prayer of Healing because there's so much movement and we're so spread out, like, and so I get to play my class, like I get to use the full extent of my kit where it's just like all spells and just maximizing that, and just I think that was such a fun fight for me because I got to play so differently and I really had to like min max my whole class.
using it reactively to snipe groups where there's like 3 or more players injured, and we can get a very effective Prayer of Healing. So what do the numbers look like for this spell? They're actually very good. It has a very low mana cost again, and a pretty high like effectiveness, spell power coefficient, and all that. So the efficiency of this spell is very high. It's like 22 in phase 1, so it's actually much more efficient than something like a Chain Heal, Holy Radiance, and it does like decently high healing per cast time. It's not great because it has such a long base cast time and we run such low haste on Discipline Priest, but the mana efficiency is definitely there. And post nerf to like Atonement and Divine Aegis, with our Smite being so much less efficient at healing, we're now going to be pressing this a lot more, so that mana efficiency is actually pretty important. One thing to mention here though is that
He said we were going to be pressing this a lot more? What did he say?
High healing per cast, like a Chain Heal, Holy Radiance, and it does like decently high healing per cast time. It's not great because it has such a long base cast time and we run such low haste on Discipline Priest, but the mana efficiency is definitely there. And post nerf to like Atonement and Divine Aegis, with our Smite being so much less efficient at healing, we're now going to be pressing this a lot more, so that mana efficiency is actually pretty important.
Okay.
One thing.
So he means not in comparison to Cataclysm, we're going to be pressing this a lot more, but in comparison to what we would have pre-nerf Priest and MoP, like where we would just be spamming Atonement. Like, we're actually going to have to utilize this spell a little bit more because Atonement isn't going to carry us as hard. If I understand that correctly. I think that's what he's trying to say.
To mention here though is that again, while in Cataclysm we got guaranteed Divine Aegis on this spell, now that Prayer of Healing doesn't always apply Divine Aegis, we actually have to be more actively looking for parties with like 3 or more targets that are actually injured, and being more selective where we Prayer of Healing. It's not just super spammable.
I like that.
So Prayer of Healing, a lot less spammable than it was in Cataclysm, however, still very strong at that like 3, 4, 5 effective targets hit range. And again, with the Atonement nerfs, it's going to be a lot more attractive in terms of if you need higher like raw HPS. Alright, so those are all of our defensive spells. Now let's talk through our Atonement spells. So similar to Cataclysm, we have Holy Fire and Smite, but new addition to Miss of Pandaria, Penance now also is an Atonement spell, so we will have to be choosing between using Penance offensively to generate damage and smart healing, or using it defensively to generate grace stacks on the target, which of course will amplify all of our future Atonement healing if it does bounce to that tank or low player. So previously, like before the MoP Classic nerfs to Atonement and Divine Aegis, our decision-making tree here was not really that interesting. We were very highly incentivized to just always use Penance aggressively and to really just spam Smite very aggressively as our filler, but post-Atonement nerfs, we do have a little bit more of an interesting decision-making process here, because aggressive Penance and Smite were both powered down quite significantly, and our other defensive filler, things like Prayer of Healing and defensive Penance, were nerfed much less significantly, only being affected by the Divine Aegis change and not the Atonement nerf. Alright, so let's go through these spells one by one, and then we'll talk about the math later on. So Holy Fire, relatively unchanged from Cataclysm. The real major only change here is that it's now instant cast. Previously in Cataclysm, if we wanted to be doing significant damage, we were very, very like kind of rooted and turreting, with both Holy Fire and Smite having cast times, and with Smite having a very long cast time of 2 seconds. We really couldn't do very much damage at all while moving, and we were forced to do things like spam Power Word Shield or Prayer of Mending while moving. Now we have access to Holy Fire during movement, as well as a glyph that we'll talk about later that allows us to Penance while moving. So we're very, very mobile, and again, because so much of our damage comes from
that is gonna take some getting used to, though. Being able to Penance while moving, Holy Fire while moving, and we have feathers now. Yo, Priest is gonna be crazy fun.
Penance now, and much less from Smite. We can do a huge amount of our damage while moving. Holy Fire does still apply a dot to the target that lasts 7 seconds, and that dot still will also contribute to our smart healing, and it still does give stacks and benefit both from evangelism. Alright, so next we have Penance. Penance is basically unchanged in its defensive form from Cataclysm, but of course it now benefits from Atonement. While previous to the Atonement nerfs that we're getting in MoP Classic, you basically were just boxed into pretty much always pressing Penance aggressively. After those nerfs, we actually do have some interesting choices to be made, whether or not we cast Penance defensively for grace and more healing per mana, or offensively to do damage to the boss. The other thing to mention here is that Penance, now being an Atonement spell, does benefit from Evangelism, so you'll get both the 30% mana cost reduction as well as 20% damage and healing. So if you have 5 stacks of Evangelism and you use your Penance defensively, you will get that additional 20% multiplier, and that's on top of Grace as well. So both of these together, you're getting a 50% multiplier to your defensive penance, and makes your
Oh, hold
both
on
of these
a second.
get that.
I need to see exactly what he was saying, but I'm trying to figure out this chat thing because I know that I don't have YouTube chat right now. Yes, you definitely can. In OBS under docs, there's a tab called OD Custom Browser. Click that, and another window will appear on the left column giving you a name. YouTube chat, and on the right, you paste the URL to the YouTube chat. I go to the URL to the YouTube chat, and you have to open the stream. What the fuck?
Additional 20.
That's gonna be annoying. I'm not sure how to fix that. Social Stream Ninja. I don't know why Restream doesn't work if I'm not using. That kind of sucks. I guess it only works if I'm actually streaming to Restream. That's a bummer. That's a total bummer. I don't know what to do about that. Dang it, man. I'll have to try something else. We could try this one. Do some activate it. Well, I hope nobody talks to me on YouTube and I miss them because that would suck. But if that does happen, try to be on the lookout for that. Okay, let's keep
percent multiplier, and that's on top of Grace as well. So both of these together.
We're chatting you up on YouTube. I just thought you were ignoring me. No, you haven't been. No, I'm looking at it right now. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Well, since I changed my whole setup or whatever, I I do have to figure out a way to be able to see the chat over there more conveniently.
There you're getting a 50% multiplier to your defensive penance, and makes your penance both
So
of these
why are
together
we getting a
your
50%
additional-
multiplier?
You have 5 stacks of evangelism, and you use your
What
penance
server? What do you mean what server?
defensively.
I am playing a priest on Benediction, my alliance priest. I still have my horde character on Mankirk. Hey Crocky, what's up, man? Hello. How's it going? We're watching a video right now. I'm learning about all of the inner workings. Yo, thank you, Crocky. Holy shit, man. I appreciate that. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, sir. We're watching a video on Priest because I'm trying to learn all the ins and outs of Priest so that I can be the best priest that I can be right now. And Double Zug, this guy is probably the best healer content creator that exists right now. And he makes really good in-depth try-hard videos, and there's a lot of good info. And I've already learned a couple of things. But really what I've learned is like, you know, while there are some differences, like Priest is still mostly the same what it was. Like there are some big pros and stuff that we are going to gain going into MoP, but a lot of the same rules kind of apply, it looks like. But I've already learned a couple of things. I've only watched it for 17 minutes so far.
You will get that additional 20% multiplier, and that's on top of Grace as well. So both of these together, you're getting a 50% multiplier.
So what's this 20% multiplier he's talking about? Sorry, I need to go back a little bit further. Oh, evangelism. Okay, increases the damage of your penance, smite, or holy fire spells by 20%. Okay, so that's what he's talking about.
An atonement spell does benefit from evangelism, so you'll get both the 30% mana cost reduction as well as 20% damage and healing. So if you have 5 stacks of evangelism and you use your penance defensively, you will get that additional 20% multiplier, and that's on top of Grace as well. So both of these together, you're getting a 50% multiplier to your defensive penance, and makes your penance just an incredibly strong and mana efficient single target heal. However, generically, we are mostly going to be using this spell to do damage. Alright, so last we have Smite, of course, our generic filler spell here. The main change from Cataclysm is that instead of a 2-second base cast time, it has a 1.5.
So it's faster.
This is actually really nice. Well,
really, they made Smite faster. That's kind of nice.
Life, and another big upgrade to our mobility, because of course a lower base cast time means you're going to have to cancel cast less.
So what are you up to, Crocky? You doing anything fun? How's your WoW journey going? Are you boosting a character? Are you leveling a character? How's it going? What's going on with that? I know your paladin was leveling, but I know like now Joyous Journeys is gone, so I'm not sure what level you are.
For movement. Also, because haste is such a bad stat for discipline and Mists of Pandaria, we're going to have much lower levels of haste overall, and so that base cast time reduction is going to be really nice just for like the feeling of the spec. Also, a minor thing here, something that's true across all healing spells is that the more instances of healing they generate, overall the less overhealing they're going to do for the most part, especially if they're smart heals, and also the smoother like expected value you're going to get from something like crit. And so with Smite having a lower base cast time, even if it does exactly the same amount of healing per mana, just the fact that there's more instances of healing in that same time frame means that it's going to overheal a little bit less on average, get a little bit more smooth value from crit on average. And with things like Twisted Fate, we'll talk about later, more instances is just better overall. So slight buff there. All right, so now that we've gone through the spells, let's go through the math and see how strong these spells actually are. Starting off with Smite, obviously our filler spell. The problem here is that Atonement nerfs really hit this spell pretty hard in terms of both its mana efficiency on healing as well as its like healing per cast time. Both are very low. The baseline spell is like worse than Flash Heal and just very low healing per cast time. And even in like the best case scenario where you have max stacks of Archangel and you include the value of Train of Thought, which is of course that 0.5 second reduction in penance, getting 6% of an extra penance per cast on your Smite is a pretty large amount of value. But again, even in the full best case scenario, we're only getting like 9 HPM. So it's still, you know, if you look here, this is our best case scenario Smite, and it's still like about the same as like Renew, Binding Heal, Greater Heal. It is better than Flash Shield, but
I
not by
mean,
too much. And it's like less than half the mana.
Smite has always kind of been bad, right? To heal with, like if you're just trying to heal. So this kind of makes sense. Like I wonder how that's gonna play out though.
Efficiency of something like Prayer of Healing. And in terms of healing per cast time, it's our lowest spell. Now, the thing to mention here is that this is a full smart heal, right? So it's going to have a lot less overhealing than something
That's
like
true.
a Prayer of Healing. So if you do compare app,
Plus it will get damage amps as well. So it's like, okay, there's a damage amp phase. We're smiting. It's getting 100% bonus or whatever it is, right? So like there are things you can still take advantage of with smite. So it being like really situational and not just like a jack of all trades is kind of, it's probably more fun for the spec, but you know, it doesn't feel good getting nerfed, I guess.
apples to apples, Smite will start to look a little bit better there, but the healing per cast time is just very low. So post Atonement nerf, the calculus of do I want to pool mana instead of pressing Smite? Do I want to spend that mana on something more efficient and higher HPS like a Prayer of Healing or a Binding Heal or a Power Word Shield? That calculus becomes a lot harder to do because again, Smite is just so much less efficient. And I'll go into like the total like damage and HPS impact of prioritizing Smite versus not prioritizing Smite later in the video when we talk about like rotations and priorities a little bit. So next, Holy Fire. This spell is pretty strong, pretty mana efficient, even post Atonement nerfs. This is definitely worth casting on cooldown, both for healing and also for damage.
Thank God.
Base with no stacks of Archangel, it's actually not that great, you know, only like 11 APM and pretty low healing per cast time, but with max Archangel stacks, it's like 18, which is getting up there close to Prayer of Healing, also doing, you know, like a very considerable amount of damage, and all being smart healing, meaning it's going to overheal a lot less than something like a Prayer of Healing. Means that Holy Fire is, again, just very worth casting.
So I think my plan is, after I watch this video and I kind of set up my bars, I set up my character, make sure my glyphs and my talents are all like ready to go, is I want to do some dungeons, and I want to get a feel for my character with this all the new MoP changes and stuff. So I'm just gonna spam a few dungeons as a healer.
So yeah, overall not too much to say here. You just want to press this button on cooldown basically all the time. The only exception is going to be if there's like very heavy burst damage, because the healing per cast time on this is just not very high. Even in the best case, only doing like 50 HP CT, so less than half of the healing per cast time of something like a Prayer of Healing. You really don't want to be pressing this during high burst damage unless you have to move and you don't have a palm. So that's Holy Fire, pretty simple, just kind of press it on cooldown. Alright, so last we have Penance. This is the most complicated, right, because it has those two modes, aggressive and defensive. So how do we compare these? Well, previous to the Atonement changes, you kind of just always wanted to press aggressive Penance, but post nerfs, there's actually a little bit more of a decision to be made here. If you look at the like healing per mana, you can see that even the best case Penance with full Archangel stacks is only going to be generating like a 26 HPM, so that's still very high, right? It's better than like POH, it's way better than Holy Fire, 100 times better than Smite. So very good healing here, and it's also going to be generating in like, you know, phase 1 bis 190k damage to the boss, which is very, very valuable. So very loose approximation in phase 1 bis, Penance on cooldown without any train of thought boosting the cooldown is going to be doing, you know, like 20-21k DPS to the boss. So
that's pretty good.
Because all your penances defensive, you're losing about as much damage as like an entire Restoration Shaman brings from Fire Elemental and Lightning Bolt. So this is very significant damage loss. So this makes aggressive penance obviously very, very attractive, but if we look at the HPM and of course like the healing per cast time of penance like defensive, double. If we look at max like plus grace, it's all the way up double. At like 43, and the healing per cast time is like 150k versus like 91k, so it's like 60-70% more healing per cast time, and also, you know, almost double the healing per mana. Plus a defensive penance will also put 3 stacks of grace on the target for the full duration of the grace. Any kind of atonement you do, any direct single target healing, you know, usually you're going to be putting this on the tank. So it won't affect Power Word Shield, but all the other healing you do, if it does happen to splash to the tank, you're getting 30% extra value, so there's even more value that isn't captured in this number here. And so what this means is that though we're very heavily pressured to use Penance offensively for the immense amount of damage it does, there is like a very, very significant value to a defensive Penance, and in any fight where there's like very significant single target damage or your tanks are getting really, really heavily hit, using a Penance to put Grace up and also just to do the direct healing is very frequently going to be the correct choice for your raid overall. Also, one last thing to mention here, if we look at damage per mana, you can see that.
I like that. I like that there's actually like a lot of, you know, decision making that I'm going to have to make with this class. That's why I fell in love with priests in the first place. It's like how unique this spec plays to other specs, and like how it has such a massive range on their kit, and you can do so many different things. So I think this is really cool. That, you know, even though their nerfs are happening, it almost opens up the class to not being so one dimensional and to making it more, you know, a little bit more higher skill cap, maybe. You know, you have to make some better decisions.
Smite.
I hear like a crazy plane outside. Dang, that sounds like it's so low.
Is like more than 50% worse than Holy Fire and almost 3 times worse than Penance, and similarly worse in terms of healing per mana as well. So what this means is that for both damage and healing, we're very heavily incentivized to prioritize pressing Holy Fire and Penance on cooldown and not to care so much about Smite. It's very important that we have very high CPM on these, so pushing them as close to on cooldown as possible is going to be very important, to the point where I think that like delaying a cast of Smite entirely or delaying a cast of something like Power Word Shield or Palm so that you can instantly press Holy Fire and Penance on cooldown is going to overall be worth it for the most part.
Really?
And again, I'll go more into detail about like the exact
All right, so Penance, Holy Fire on cooldown no matter what. No matter what. Okay.
Loss you get from pushing like half your penances defensive versus offensive later on in the rotation and priority section. Alright, so those are all of our spells. Now let's really quickly go over cooldowns. Not really a lot has changed here since Cataclysm. The first real major change is that we lost Divine Hymn. This is now a wholly specific cooldown.
Oh shit! We don't have Divine Hymn anymore? Honestly, Divine Hymn, Disc Divine Hymn was not that great, but that's kind of sucks.
Huge loss for us as discipline. Honestly, the cooldown wasn't really that great in Cataclysm. We still have access to Shadow Fiend, which does still give us a
what did he say about that?
Mana. Lost Divine Hymn. This is now a wholly specific cooldown. Although this isn't like tremendously huge loss for us as discipline, honestly, the cooldown wasn't really that great in Cataclysm. We still have access to Shadow Fiend, which does still give us a significant amount of mana returned. Shadow Fiend now has a 3-minute cooldown down from a 5, and will now dynamically update with your player haste, so you don't have to like put this down right before a Bloodlust to get max value.
I hated
you can just kind of send it whenever. It will still, however, combine very well with our next cooldown, which is Hymn of Hope, our Mana Hymn. So Mana Hymn is a 6-minute cooldown in Mists of Pandaria. It's available to all pre-specs, and it does a similar effect where it has like 4 ticks of restoring 2% mana to 3 low mana friendly party or raid members. Meaningfully, this will prioritize healers in MoP, so it won't like splash to DPS like it used to in Kata and waste ticks. All these ticks will go to healers, and it still retains the effect of, you can see here as I'm channeling it, it's going to hit myself, and it's going to increase my maximum mana pool by 15%, so that's 45k extra mana. And this will last the whole duration of the hymn, plus like an extra 8 seconds. And if you use this with Fiend, of course, you'll be getting 15% more from each Shadow Fiend attack. So stacking these up is really important. Also, you can see here, it no longer gets extra ticks from haste. So previously, like in Cataclysm, you could actually send your mana hymn like during a haste proc and get extra ticks. That no longer works on either hymn. You also do get like a significant amount of value for every additional priest if you stack these, because the 15% mana pool increase will stack additively. So every single hymn, if you use them at the
What? Yo, so we need to stack hymns. What the fuck? Oh man. Stacking mana hymns is a large mana regen increase for each priest. Oh man, we gotta stack mana hymns.
At the same time, you get 45k more mana. And so if you use this like while sending Bender, if you stack like 2 hymns, you get 500 spirit, 3 hymns, you get 1,000, 4 hymns, you get 1,600. So every additional mana hymn you get from an additional priest in the raid is going to give you slightly more value than just like additive. Next we have Barrier. This is identical to Cataclysm, just being a 25% damage
except for it looks ugly
for 10 seconds in an AoE. This is a 3-minute cooldown, very, very powerful raid cooldown if the raid can be stacked. You can also
hold on a second. What did he say about that?
Than just like additive. Next we have Barrier. This is identical to Cataclysm, just being a 25% damage reduction for 10 seconds in an AoE. This is a 3-minute cooldown, very, very powerful raid cooldown if the raid can be stacked. You can also use it as a mini tank external on the tanks. Speaking of tank externals, we still have pain suppression, which is of course a 3-minute cooldown that gives the tank 40% damage reduction for 8 seconds. It's also now baseline castable while stunned, however this doesn't really matter.
That doesn't really matter in most cases, but that could be kind of cool in some cases.
For PvE. We also have Life Grip, which is still a 1.5 minute CD, however, it is slightly changed in MoP to no longer require you to be facing the target, so just a little bit of quality of life there on Life Grip.
I didn't even know that it required that in the first place.
Those are all the cooldowns we retain from Cataclysm. We have 2 new cooldowns here, which are both pretty important. The first is Void Shift.
This button is so fun. This is basically lay on hands. Like, it is gonna be so fun to save a tank with Void Shift. Like, I'm kind of hyped for it.
This is a 5-minute cooldown that will just...
Or potentially murder a tank. Like, you can Void Shift someone and put them at 25% health. Like, that could be kind of dangerous, actually.
Swap your health percentage with the target. So this can be used in PvE to effectively lay on hands a target if you are 100%
That's so
HP,
sick.
or if you're about to die,
I'm
you
so
can
hyped,
kill
bro.
somebody else.
One of the coolest things about playing a paladin is having lay on hands and being able to just like clutch fucking save somebody's life. Like, that's so fun. So the ability to basically simulate that exact experience is going to be so cool.
This is health. And last but not least, we have Spirit Shell. So this is an incredibly powerful and also pretty flexible button. It's a 1-minute cooldown, so very low cooldown here, and it lasts 15 seconds. And what this does is make our heal, flash heal, greater heal, and prayer of healing no longer heal, but instead do exactly the same amount of healing they would do, but it absorbs, and this does include the average value of crit and mastery. So there's really 2 things you're going to be using this for primarily. One is to do very effective tank healing. So of course this changes your greater heal and flash heal to be fully absorbed, and this means that, you know, these are capped at 60% of your HP, the exact same cap as Divine Aegis, so you can't like just infinitely stack a giant shield on a tank, but you can, you know, do a very, very significant pre-shield on a tank for a tank buster, as well as just anything that does very significant.
That's going to be pretty fun. That's going to be pretty fun. Being able to like basically negate an entire fucking mechanic with this is going to be pretty cool.
Single
Let me hear a little bit more about what he says here.
The exact be fully absorbed, and this means that, you know, these are capped at 60% of your HP, the exact same cap as Divine Aegis, so you can't like just infinitely stack a giant shield on a tank, but you can, you know, do a very, very significant...
How can it kill a tank? Oh, Void Shift? So what you do is basically life swap. And let's say that the tank is already at 100% health and you're at 25% health, or you're at 1% health. If you're at 1% health, it will automatically heal them to 25%. So you can't like life swap someone below 25%. So you'll always gain some value there. But like, imagine that you almost died and you life swapped a tank and put the tank at 25% health, and the tank got hit by an ability that did over 25% of its health, then they would kill him. Like, but realistically, what's more likely going to happen is the tank is going to be at 25% health. You're going to be at 100% health, and you press life swap and you basically put that tank as 100% health. So it's just like, oh, the tank is at like 1% health. I life swap, full heal, and I'm put at 25% health. I'll permanently be at 25% health. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a decent little cooldown there. So, yeah. It's a really fun button. The little bit that I played with it, it's a fun button. It's basically lay on hands, because most of the time, like, life swapping someone is pulling them out of danger. You know, and like most of the time you're not going to be in danger when you are life swapping somebody. Like, you're probably going to be fine.
Pre-shield on a tank for a tank buster, as well as just anything that does very significant single target damage. You can effectively reduce your overhealing to 0 on your tank heals, which is really powerful. This can also sometimes get around like healing effects, like on Amber Shaper, for example, you can Spirit Shell into somebody with the debuff and not proc
Oh,
their
dude.
healing debuff.
That's so good. So if they have like Mortal Strike or some sort of like weird thing, then you can use Spirit Shell to just basically bypass that Mortal Strike.
However, the main thing you're going to be doing with this is pre-shielding the raid with Prayer of Healing. Even though we're going to have very low haste, our Prayer of Healing is going to have like a pretty close to a 2.5 second base cast time. And luckily enough, Spirit Shell has a duration that's, you know, like perfectly divisible by 2.5. So we should be able to get 6 POHs inside of our Spirit Shell. Spirit Shell doesn't have a GCD, so you can literally just macro.
So Spirit Shell into what? I guess you would, if you wanted to Spirit Shell, would you want to do 5 groups plus 1 extra, or would you want to Spirit Shell a couple of groups and get a bigger Spirit Shell so that they don't take any damage? I wonder what you would do with that. Or you could just Prayer of Healing 1 group 6 times.
/cast Spirit Shell /cast POH into one button, and as long as you're not on a GCD, as soon as you press this, you'll instantly start POHing, and as long as you spam it with any amount of haste, you'll be able to get 6 full casts. And so this means that in a 25-man, you can get a POH on every single group, plus an additional one on a particular group. And in 10-man, it means you can get 3 POHs on each group, which is actually incredibly
That
powerful.
seems
So
really
this is
strong.
actually a little bit weaker in 25-man from a single priest than it is in 10-man, but it's still incredibly powerful to be able to put this significant of a pre-shield on the raid on such a low cooldown, and having 1 or 2 disc priests in the group, again especially in 10-man, can just completely negate certain types of bursty mechanics, and the low cooldown will just give you a lot of CD coverage in both forms of content. So that's Spirit Shell. Again, not really a super complicated ability, but in terms of how you use it in the fight, very important. Again, to time it properly around damage bursts.
It's not a complicated ability, but how you used it is going to be complicated, and when is going to be the best time to basically permanently convert all of your healing into shielding, like with a duration. Like, it's gonna be kind of a tricky spell to use, but could be very powerful in the right like circumstances.
And you should really just be asking yourself the question, what's more likely to wipe the raid, the tank dying or the raid dying to burst damage? If it's the first, you want to use it on the tank, obviously. If it's the second, you want to time it correctly around that burst damage that you can absorb. So those are our cooldowns. Now I'm going to really quickly go through the talent rows. The new talent system in MoP has themed rows where you get a point every 15 levels and you can choose between 3 options. Our 15 row is crowd control stuff, so mostly directed towards PvP. Void Tendrils is a 30-second cooldown root that will root up to 5 targets around us for 20 seconds. This is kind of useful in like dungeons and stuff if you need to control mobs. Psyfiend is a 45-second cooldown. It summons this little pet that doesn't move, and this pet will just fear any kind of enemy target that's close to it. This is mostly like for arenas, and in arenas it is pretty good. You can like put this around LOS and stuff. Third option is Dominate Mind. This allows us to mind control up to level 93 for 30 seconds, obviously for PvP. Our 30 row is going to be Mobility, and while it does technically have 3 options, yeah, you can pretty much delete.
The feather, bro. The feather. The feather. That is the coolest fucking ability they add, bro. I am excited to be able to use the feather, man.
The first and last from your brain, because the middle option is just so disgustingly overpowered. It's called Angelic Feather. It has a 10-second recharge, 3 maximum charges, and each charge
getting shielded and getting a boost. So Body and Soul is cool, but feather is just so much better. Yeah. So maybe there are options where you could take Body and Soul if you don't want to manage your feathers, but feather is so powerful that like I just don't think that I'm ever going to take Body and Soul. Like, unless in a really specific niche scenario but in that niche scenario, I would rather just cast a feather on that person, you know?
We'll put a feather on the ground. You can see you can aim it. And as soon as you run through this feather, it's going to give you 80% sprint for 6 seconds. You can also pre-place the feathers on the ground, and even when they're out, you will still regain charges. However, you can only have a maximum of 3 placed at any one time. Just this spell alone makes us the most mobile healer. So I have 100% default to Angelic Feather.
Fuck yeah.
And while it is very convenient to just have an @player bind that you can instantly use it on yourself with, I would definitely recommend having an @cursor bind or just a normal bind for Feather where you can use it on other players. It's a really good way of differentiating your skill from other priests, similar to how like really maximizing life grip felt pretty cool in Cataclysm. In Mists of Pandaria, a very well-placed feather on the right player at the right time can easily save a pull. Our 45 row is our first throughput row. The first option here is Surge of Light for both Holy and Discipline. This will just cause all of our healing spells and also Smite to have a 15% chance to proc a free flash heal, and this can stack up to 2 charges. Our second option is Mindbender. This will replace Shadow Fiend with this little squid guy. He is only a 1 minute cooldown, has a longer duration.
1 minute cooldown.
He restores a little bit less mana than Shadow Fiend, but because of the lower cooldown and longer duration, it's overall a mana increase. And he also does a significant amount of damage.
Really?
Our third option here is Solace and Insanity. For Discipline Priest, this will replace our Holy Fire with Power Word Solace. This has 3 main benefits versus Holy Fire. First of all, this is unaffected by like the nerf to Atonement, so this will heal for 100% of damage dealt. So this will increase our Holy Fire healing by a significant amount. The new spell also has no mana cost, so we do save all of the mana we would have spent on Holy Fire previously.
What?
And since we're pressing this on cooldown,
I didn't know that. That seems crazy good. What the fuck?
Is a decent chunk of mana. Solace will also restore 1% of max mana, so 3,000 every time it hits. So you can see there we got 3,000 mana. All right, so how do we actually
that's pretty OP.
compare these? Let's start with Bender here. So this is like Shadow Fiend versus Bender. You can see Bender has a longer duration, so it's going to get more attacks. They both have the same like attack timer and both scale with the player haste and lust and stuff like that. It is melee haste that they do scale with, which is a little odd. All right, so you can see here I did like Fiend MP5, which is like 2250. Bender MP5, which is about 4,800, so we gain like, 2,600 MP5 from Bender versus Fiend. This will vary slightly based on like how you use your mana him and stuff like that, but it should be relatively close enough. That's the equivalent of 4,500 extra spirit, which is going to be about like 4,500 HPS. It's also about 5,400 DPS just from the extra mana, assuming we spend all this mana on Smite. So this is something that's going to be across the board for all these talents. Any talent that gives you mana regen will also give you effective DPS, again, if you do spend that extra mana on Smite, because we are mana limited, meaning that extra mana is also extra DPS. One of the biggest differences between Fiend and Bender, though, is the damage done. So you can see here, Bender and Fiend have like a pretty similar coefficient and spell power for the melee attacks, but Bender obviously has 1/3 of the cooldown and also does more attacks because it has a longer duration. So this results in, just from the attack damage, you get about like an 8% increase in damage versus Shadow Fiend. This is also going to be magnified by the fact that with Bender, you can use your Bender inside Lust on pull without really losing too much mana. Bender will also line up because it's a minute cooldown with things like gloves, tailoring procs, some trinkets and stuff like that. So this is a very low ball estimate of the DPS gained. It will actually be much higher than this, again, considering things like Lust, Free Pot. So overall here we have a combined like HPS of about 4,500 from this extra mana, as well as, both of these DPS numbers included. This will be a little bit less because we aren't going to spend all of our extra mana on Smite, but all this totaled, we get about like 19% more damage than without talents. All right, so next we have Solace. So this is a little bit more complicated of a calculus, right? Because we have to include both the 3,000 mana we get from casting it, as well as the fact that it removes all the mana costs from Holy Fire, except Holy Fire with Evangelism doesn't have like a constant mana cost. You can see as I get more stacks, the mana cost of my Holy Fire is going to go down, and if I use these all with Evangelism, it's going to go back up again. So we have to have some way of just estimating this. I just estimated it as 4,100. This is going to be with a large percentage of them casted at max stacks, with some small amount casted lower. So obviously this isn't like perfectly accurate. It will vary with how much you cast, like Smite and stuff like that, but I think overall it's like close enough. So if we assume perfect CPM of like 1 every 10 seconds, the cost reduction is going to give us about 2,000 MP5, and the mana returns like 3,000 every 10, right? So it's 1,500 every 5. So total we get like 3,550 MP5 from this, which is significantly more than Bender. But again, this is assuming we're using Holy Fire perfectly on CD. The worse we play, i.e. like the lower CPM we have on Holy Fire, the worse and worse this gets. So this MP5 is worth about 6,300 spirit. Again, all that mana regen can be translated into damage, in which case this is going to be doing, you know, more extra damage from mana than Bender because it's a little bit higher MP5. Also, post the nerfs to Atonement with that conversion going from 70 to 100%, we are going to be getting, you know, 30% more healing from our Holy Fire. Over the course of the fight, this is going to be about like 2% more healing. So all this stuff combined means we're going to get about 6.7% extra healing from this talent, as well as like 14% more damage. So versus Bender, we're doing a little bit less than double the healing and, you know, 4 to 5% less damage. However, again, this Bender is going to be underestimated because of all the prequel stuff I was talking about. And this Solace numbers are going to be overestimated because you're never really going to have perfect CPM on Holy Fire. Again, the worse you play, the worse these get, whereas Bender, it's very easy to just press it on cooldown. Lastly, we have Surge of Light. So as you can see here, you can get 2 charge of this. They last 20 seconds, and each one is just an instant flash heal. This is also very buffed relative to Cataclysm, where it was like a 6% chance, I believe, on only a few spells. So how do we evaluate this? This is a little bit harder to do, right? Because we have to actually count like the number of casts. So I just did this based on like the sim, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Basically, this is between like a 9 to a 12% in the best case, where you're always casting the flash heal on like a graced target, % healing increase. So it actually is a little bit better in terms of just raw healing output than the other two options, which you would expect, right? Because it's less damage. This also only has value if you aren't like GCD capped, right? Where we don't have the GCDs to even spend the Flash of Lights, where we're actually eating into like our Smite cast or something. However, because we were just so mana capped in Mists of Pandaria, and because Spirit's like pretty bad, we always have the GCDs to cast these flash heals. Also, there's a little bit of extra value that I didn't really calculate, which is just that every extra flash heal is obviously more grace uptime.
That's true.
So that's like an extra healing increase beyond what we get just from the direct healing of the flash heal itself. We also will gain some like effective DPS here, because if we have to cast single target heals anyways, and, you know, a Surge of Light prevents us from having to spend 20,000 mana on a flash heal, that's, you know, 2-3 extra smites, which is more damage. I didn't really calculate that because it's so like contextual based on the fight. There's also another thing that I did calculate, which is that if you're keeping up grace on the tank, let's say like 50% of your penances you're pressing defensively in order to just keep grace up on the tank. So let's say Surge of Light reduces the amount of penances we have to cast on the tank by 50%. That just in itself is like a 5,000 DPS increase, or about like a 9.5% damage increase, which is like actually decently comparable to something like
That's
our low
kinda
ball
interesting.
on Bender. It's not quite as good as our high ball on Solace. But again, if we do include the fact that if you are having to actually press flash heals or power word shields and spending mana on spot healing, and you save that mana with Surge of Light, this will go up even more because you'll be getting some effective spirit, right? So I do think on like potentially some fights where there's very, very high single target damage, especially like in a 10-man where you can't necessarily always rely on your other healers to do spot healing for you, there may be some circumstances where Surge of Light is good. However, outside of those circumstances, I do think you will generally speaking default to Mindbender.
That's kind of
Again, it's much
interesting.
easier to play than Solace. It relies much less heavily on you having very good CPM on Holy Fire. And with that, like pre-pot Lust, lining up with your gloves, Alchemist Stone, all that stuff, the damage you're going to gain from Mindbender is just going to be way, way, way outpacing the damage you get even from like a perfectly played Solace. However, if you do just really prefer playing with Solace, you absolutely can, and you won't really lose that much DPS or HPS. All right, so next our 60
So really, it's very preference. That's kind of interesting. I like, I kind of like all the ideas that come from the instant flash of lights and stuff. Like, I kind of like that. It seems like a fun playstyle too, but it does seem a lot more involved. And if you're not doing it well, then you're probably losing out. Like, and Mindbender just being like, okay, just press this every 1 minute and you're getting all this extra mana, you're getting all this extra DPS. Like, it's probably going to be like, yeah, the go-to pick for sure. All right, let's see what he says about this row.
It's all personal defensiveness with Spectral Guise, which is a little bit of a off-the-wall talent. So first we have Desperate Prayer. This is a 2-minute cooldown that just heals us for 30% of our health. Not being on the GCD is a big upgrade from the Cataclysm version of this. So this is a really nice option, but again, because it is active, it does require you to actually press it for it to be good. So next I'm going to talk about Angelic Bulwark. This is basically just like the passive version of Desperate Prayer. I would recommend this for most players because it doesn't require you to actually press anything. It just automatically happens. What this is a little like mini cheat death effect where Anytime a damaging attack brings you below 30% HP, you gain an absorption shield equal to 20% of your total health for 20 seconds. So in terms of like the actual like HPS you get from these, Bulwark is actually slightly higher than DP if it procs on cooldown, but it's, you know, obviously not going to proc on cooldown. So I think if you're like really fully cheesing HPS, you probably take Desperate Prayer. And getting access to both of these defensive plus again that passive focus wall that we now have means that we're just going to be infinitely more tanky than we ever have been before. The middle talent here is, again, kind of off the wall, weird one. It's called Spectral Guise. It's a 30-second cooldown, and what it does is your shadow blurs into the darkness, leaving your true form behind. As a shadow, you are stealth, but remain in combat. And this lasts 6 seconds or until your true form is hit by 3 direct attacks. So in PvP, this is really useful. You can use it to, like...
Yeah, that seems super fun, but not really applicable in PvE probably.
Vanish, like crowd control and stuff. There's really a lot of cool play you can do with this. You can stealth in and, you know, fear stuff. So in PvP, incredibly powerful. It's also possible that this can be used to cheese certain targeted raid mechanics. So on some bosses, if you vanish certain mechanics, if they target you, it will cause them to like not be casted. And on some bosses, it causes them to be like retargeted instantly to somebody else. So again, generically, I would just pick one of these defensives, but something to keep your eye on. There could be some potential cheese on some boss mechanics where maybe you take this. It's also just super fun in like, you know, dungeons and leveling and in PvP to just have like a vanish randomly on a priest. And really cool outplay potential. Kind of similar to how you can like death sheeps and stuff like that. We now have an extra button to do like pretty awesome outplays in PvP. All right, so next we have like our second most important throughput row in the 75 row. Unfortunately for our like playstyle diversity, there's really only one option, and it's this first talent, Twist of Fate. So what Twist of Fate does is after you damage or heal any target below 35% HP, you deal 15% increased damage and 15% increased healing for 10 seconds. This means that your atonement spells are going to do 15% more.
Yeah, that's going to be good. All right, I kind of want to make sure I'm following along here a little bit.
Damage, but then the healing that they do, which is based on that damage, is also going to be increased by another 15%.
Double dip.
So you double dip on all your atonement spells. And so that means we're going to get like a 1.15 times 1.15 multiplier on all of our atonement. So it's like about a 32% increase to all these spells. And this means that like the calculus on whether or not we want to cast aggro penance versus defensive penance, the healing of our holy fire and smite is just going to be dramatically increased if we ever do proc this effect. And also, not only does it synergize with Atonement in that way, it also synergizes with the fact that Atonement is a smart heal and has such a wide range in Mists of Pandaria, meaning that pretty much anytime anybody dips below 35% HP for more than a few seconds, you are, generally speaking, going to be proccing this and getting 10 seconds worth of...
Whoa. I did not realize that this is damaging or healing a target below 35% health. That is crazy. Okay, I thought you were going to have to snipe low targets and be like, oh, there's a fight with like some ads. Like the fact that this actually, you heal people that are below 35% HP and you get this buff for 10 seconds, that's sick. That is really cool.
Value. Also, the fact that we do a lot of damaging spells. You know, we're damaging the boss all the time. If there's ads, we can swap the ads and damage.
That's more the kind of thing that I was thinking that this would be applicable in. I want to probably just kind of change. Let's see. We go Mindbender. I don't know if we want to play Desperate Prayer or not. I think we do. Twist of Fate. Okay. That's the talents we're going to run.
Damage those ads. This means that anytime the boss is below 35%, so that means the entire, you know, last third of any boss that goes to 0% HP, or anytime any kind of ad spawns where, similar to Demonology Warlock, you would be sniping ads below a certain health threshold to proc your decimation. Now as a priest, we can be sniping those ads below 35% to get extra healing and damage value out of our twist. So this is both incredibly powerful overall for our damage and healing, and also adds an entirely new element to our playstyle, encouraging us to look for opportunities to snipe activations on this on both enemies and friendlies.
That's
and
really
in my
fun.
Sims, I compare different like priorities and casting patterns and talent choices with PI and twist. And even assuming that Twist never procced outside of Execute, i.e. like it only was active for the last 35% of the boss's HP, and you never got a proc off a player or an ad, it's still significantly stronger than the other two options, which are Power Infusion and Divine Insight. So let's talk about Power Infusion next. This is now a personal. You can no longer press this on another player, which is one of the best changes to the entire spec in my opinion. This is now a 2-minute cooldown. Again, a personal. It will still increase our haste by 20% and reduce our mana costs by 20%. However, it now also has the effect of increasing our damage by 5%, which will of course scale up all of our atonement healing as well as our damage. So because haste is such a bad stat for us and we really don't have any breakpoints, the haste is not super valuable. Really what it does is increase our burst HPS as well as allow us to cast more spells inside the mana reduction window, giving it a little bit of extra value. With a 20-second duration on a 2-minute cooldown, we only have about 17% uptime, which means our overall mana cost reduction is only about like 3.3%, and our overall damage multiplier, like average uptime, is going to be less than 1%. The fact that it's an on-use does give it a little bit of extra value because it does stacked with like trinkets and gloves and procs and all that stuff. And it is good for burst healing, so there's potential for maybe on some fights where you really just need burst healing inside of a specific window, or to get, you know, 1 or 2 extra prayer of healings inside of your spirit shell. However, the problem with this is that anytime you need burst healing, you're very likely to have somebody drop below 35% HP.
That's
in
true.
which case 32% extra healing on your atonement and 15% extra healing on all your spells is going to be pretty comparable to the PI benefits anyways. And so really I just think you can basically just spec Twist of Fate and never think about this ever again. The last option here in Divine Insight is basically just a Holy and Shadow talent for Discipline. It says when you cast a Penance, there is a 100% chance your next Power Word Shield will both ignore and not cause the Weaken Soul effect. So if I put a Power Word Shield on myself and Penance with this talent, you can see I get this proc, and that means I can press another Power Word Shield on myself, and it will ignore Weak Soul and still put the Power Word Shield up. So really, this is like kind of a PvP talent, I guess. It doesn't like reduce the mana cost of the Power Word Shield, and so that means it has effectively a 0 overall HPS increase. Our last row is by far the most important in terms of our healing output, and gives us access to 3 very powerful combination raid healing and damage buttons. And the sort of Venn diagram of usability here covers basically every single situation in raid, with Cascade being great if the raid is very spread out, Divine Star being incredibly powerful if the raid is pixel stacked, especially in 25-man, and Halo being just generically powerful if the raid is in a loose spread within 30 yards, with both Divine Star and Halo doing like non-negligible damage. So Cascade has a 40-yard range and a 25-second cooldown. When it does is it launches a bolt of like healing if you target a friendly and damage if you target an enemy. So this doesn't do both damage and healing at the same time like the other two buttons. So the way this works is that the first bounce will split into 2, and then those 2 will split into 2 themselves, and on
Dude,
and on
that
for
seems
4 bounces.
awesome.
And so what this means is that, well, you know, with
That
0
seems
bounces
so
it hits
fun.
1, second bounce is 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. So the total hits is going to be 31 at 4 bounces.
Man,
This means it's going to hit every player in 10-man and every
that seems so fun.
player in 25-man. However, this does tend to bounce on pets somewhat. So in 25-man, you can sometimes, if there's too many pets, if there's like an army of the dead out, it can sometimes not hit all 25 players, which does kind of eat into its efficiency in 25-man significantly. It also has a mechanic whereby the farther the target is away from you, the more healing they will take. Generally
really?
speaking, if the raid is relatively spread, which is really the situation where you're going to be using Cascade anyways, you'll always get like the maximum value. And also, as the bolts travel secondarily, they will also gain more amplification. So generally speaking, even if the first target's close to you, if the next targets are far, you'll get pretty good value. But if the entire raid is pixel stacked, Cascade is going to be pretty bad. Divine Star has a much lower mana cost and lower cooldown, normally 15 seconds of cooldown. What this will do is shoot a little star out in front of you that will do damage and healing as it goes out and as it comes
The
back
Ari
in.
ball.
So outside of like movement or whatever, you should get 2 hits on anyone in range, which is really nice for our crit. It will smooth out like the number of crits you get and your Divine Aegis generation and Divine Aegis refresh. The effect is also totally uncapped, so it will scale up very effectively, especially in 25-man if the raid is fully stacked up. Halo is a 40-second cooldown, so the longest cooldown amongst these spells, and what this does is release a giant circle that will do both damage and healing to anything inside of 30 yards of you. And
You know, what's so cool about these abilities is that they are really low cooldown. Like, they're not fucking 2-3 minutes, you know what I mean? So you're going to be able to actually, this is going to really impact the way that you play, especially because of how impactful these abilities are. Like Halo, Divine Star, and Cascade are all very, very strong.
And similar to Cascade, this will like ramp up as the disc gets further and further away. So you can see if I press it here, we're going to get a low amount of damage on the first, and then as it goes out, it's going to get higher and higher, and it will reach its maximum amp at 25 yards. This means that for maximum damage, ideally you'll want to be at least
Going to impact due to being impactful. I mean, it's just going to be good. It's going to be good. Did I say something stupid?
25 yards and no more than 30
It's just gonna be so fun because instead of having like a cooldown that's I don't know. It's fun having a long cooldown, like a 4-minute, 3-minute cooldown button or whatever. But like having a button that's only 30 seconds, you're pressing that so many times. Like that's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be way different than how Priest just played, you know?
yards from the boss. And for healing, your ideal case with Halo is you 25 yards away from the entire raid stacked up. Alright, so how do we estimate the value?
So far, Priest seems so cool. Like all of the elements that I found fun about Priest are being amplified. You know, like the very diverse kit that they have to kind of handle any situation, right? And it's like, and then, okay, what are the weaknesses of Priest? Okay, we have really shitty mobility. Okay, like they're kind of you know, they're not very good whenever targets are spread out, right? If people are then the people that play them, oh shit. I feel like that's the two biggest weaknesses of Priest is like they're very immobile and they have very they're really not very good when everybody is like super spread out, and you know, like the weird niche like atonement cases, you know, like having to kind of stand still and like turret, right? Like kind of speaks to mobility or whatever. But like all of that gets solved. Okay, now they're going to be the most mobile healer. You're taking penance and being able to cast it on the move. You're taking penance and being able to actually DPS with it, right? And then Holy Fire is now instant cast. Before you had to just stand still and cast Holy Fire. And it's like those are two of your biggest like offensive spells that also heal. Like that's so cool. And Atonement is now, oh yeah, and Atonement didn't work if targets were too far. Like now Atonement works on literally anybody in the whole raid. It's like 40 or 50 yards away from the target. Like that's crazy. And then you on top of that you add feathers, 80% movement speed pretty much permanently. Like not quite permanently, but like when it matters, it's almost going to be permanent. Like that's going to be insane to have like such crazy mobility. Like that is one thing I feel like if they were to nerf something, it would be feather, you know, because it almost outshines the other options like so heavily. And they're giving even more because, you know, that solves the other weakness, right? It's like, okay, people are spread out. I'm not very good at healing people that are spread out. Okay, now you have Cascade. Now you have Halo. Now you're insane at healing people that are spread out. You also have you know, Atonement is like going out 40 yards from the target. You're insane. You're insane at spot healing. If we have a spread fight, it's gonna be so good. Like now it's like, wow, that's crazy. I just heal everybody anywhere. Like that's so fun. That's gonna be crazy. And you know, they have use case for whenever we are hella stacked up that like, okay, prayer of healing is still gonna be strong. You have spirit shell prayer healing. You have divine star if we get the ability to like hard stack on the target and stuff. Like, man, that's gonna be cool.
Value of like a Halo on just randomly spread raid. So let's say our player character is in the middle here, and then let's say that's 25 yards and that's 30 yards. And then let's say our raid members are just going to be randomly distributed around here, such that like they're equally likely to be any distance from the player. So again, this is like your 25 yards, and then this is all the way to 30. So at the minimum, you're getting 10% if the player is like, let's say a player was right stacked on top of you, they're getting 10%. And then as you go out here, you're going all the way out to 100%. And then also if they're between 25 and 30 yards, they're 100%. So if this is just like a simple 0 to 100 gradient, the average would just be like 50%. But because we have it starting at 10% and also like this band between 25 and 30, this means that the average is going to be more like 62% of the like max tooltip value on average. But it's a little bit unrealistic to just assume every player is randomly placed in the raid equally distant, right? So we're much more likely to have a scenario where we have like maybe our player character is here, and then we have the boss, and you know, maybe there's like 25 yards between them. You have the melee are going to be clustered here, you have the tank here, and then you have the range kind of in a loose spread. And in this situation, if you have your halo like this, what's going to happen is you're going to get probably a little bit lower than average value on your ranged players, but you're going to get much higher than average value on the melee and on the tanks. We can also come up with some like very efficient scenarios where, for example, let's say we have the boss here, we have the melee here, and the tanks here. We have the ranged or loose spread like this.
Okay, he's gonna say, yeah, he's gonna say go over here so that you get full value. Dude, that is gonna be fun. You know I'm gonna be fucking doing that shit. I'd be like, oh guys, I gotta go over here. I gotta get Halo value. Sorry, I gotta go over here. Oh, you guys are all stacked up over there? I'll be right back. Like, that's gonna be fun, dude.
Do is have your priest player over here, such that when you do Halo, you're actually like very far from both ranged and the melee and the tanks and the boss. So it's pretty important to think about your positioning with Halo because you can get a lot of extra value, like, you know, 30, 40, 50% more value on your Halo on average if you do just sort of like think about where you want to be and try to maximize your distance from both ranged and melee and the tanks. Alright, so those are our three options, D-Star, Halo, and Cascade. Now I'm going to look at a table here. This is a table of the estimated HPS gained from each ability on cooldown versus the amount of players it hit. So 10 and below, this is our 10-man estimation, and 25 and below, this is our 25-man. So for 10-man, we can see that Halo on 10 targets and Cascade on 10 targets are about equivalent, with Halo best case scenario being much stronger than Cascade. This is true as well for 25-man, where if you can get more than average value out of your Halo, it's going to be much better than Cascade, but if you can't get very good value out of your Halo with range, you want to be Cascade. And D-Star is going to be very competitive with average Halo and Cascade at higher than 6 average targets in 10-man. So if the 10-man rate is stacked where you can get 7 or more targets on your D-Star, it starts to be very, very good and competitive with Halo in the best case, where you can stand, you know, 25 yards away from the whole raid. In 25-man, the ratios are very, very similar, where Halo on its average case and Cascade are going to be very, very comparable. Although in 25-man, Cascade is harmed a little bit again by the fact that it's going to splash onto pets, with Halo in its best case being dramatically better than Cascade, and Divine Star outcompeting Halo and Cascade at around 16 to 17 targets hit, and being dramatically better than all the other options except Halo in the best case at 25 targets hit. So the general rule of thumb here is if you can hit more than half the raid with your Divine Star, or if the raid is going to be heavily stacked in periods of high rot damage, Divine Star is very, very powerful. If the raid is so spread out that you can't consistently get good hits with your Halo or Divine Star, you want to play Cascade. And for everything in between, you're going to be...
That's so cool that like we are actually going to have a talent that really, depending on the fight, we really, really want to change it. And not only that, it's our most important healing spell. Like, it's not even like, oh, this is like a niche case. Well, I guess I could take this talent over here and it's going to make me do 5% more DPS because I'm playing it. Like, this is going to massively change from a fight to fight. Like, what's the best one to pick? And it's going to be the most important spell in your kit. Like, that's going to be crazy.
Be playing Halo and trying to optimize your positioning so you can get better than average value on your Halo hits. The other big thing to take into account here is the cooldowns of these spells, as sometimes the tiebreaker is not going to be the amount of targets you can hit, but rather whether or not the cooldowns line up with damage instances in the fight. So for example, on Garrulon, the crushes, I believe...
That is an interesting perspective too, because like, oh, let's say you have a damage event every 30 seconds, you know, well, Halo's not going to work there. You know, like Halo's every 40. You could do every other one. So you'd want to like save it almost. So it's like going to be kind of inefficient. But if you have one that has a lower cooldown, that would...
I believe they're a little bit too close together to line up properly with Halo. But if you take something like Cascade or Divine Star, you can potentially delay your Divine Star or Cascade slightly to line it up with every single crush. Another important factor to keep in mind is that all three of these buttons have travel time. So you can see Halo, when I cast it, it takes a while to reach its maximum distance. Divine Star has a slightly faster travel time, and Cascade having a longer, more like Halo-esque travel time. This means that, you know, again, for something like Crush on Garrulon, before the stun is about to go out, right before, you can press Divine Star, Cascade, or Halo.
Wow.
And as long as you're far enough away from the targets you want to hit, the travel time delay will allow you to preload some healing for that effect. This is especially potent if you can be max range from the raid with a halo. So let's imagine the raid stack is on this target dummy. There's damage coming out in 2 seconds. I wait until the damage is 1 second from happening. I press my halo. I start a prayer of healing. The damage
Boom.
happens. Now both my halo and prayer of healing are going to hit at the
That's
same
gonna be
time and instantly do a
sick.
massive AoE heal on the whole raid. This is not super important, but for very, very bursty mechanics, it can be something to keep in mind. So those are our 90 row talents, all very powerful, and similar to Rest of Trauma with Healing Rain, these spells are so incredibly efficient and so high HPS, as you can see on these charts, that pressing them on cooldown and optimizing the value you get out of them, minimizing their overhealing and all that, is going to be very, very crucial to our overall...
What the fuck was that giant AoE thing? That's Halo. So, yeah, they have Halo, which basically does a massive ring that like does AoE and healing, right? Or it does AoE damage and healing, and the further that it travels, it does more healing. And that's what he was talking about. Like your positioning is like super important. And then the other talent that they have is you basically throw out this ball like a yo-yo, and it hits everything on the way, and then it stops, and then it comes back and it hits everything on the way again, and it has like a pretty low cooldown, and it heals a fuck ton. So if you can get everyone grouped up in a line and you just throw that out, you do a fuck ton of healing, and it does damage. And then the other one is just like kind of it just fucking bounces. Like I don't even know how to explain it. I don't even know what would it even be like. I don't even know how to explain it, honestly. It just bounces all over the place. And like you throw it out, right? You do this button and you throw it out, and it just like bounces, and every time it bounces, it duplicates. So it starts off as 1 bounce, then it goes to 2 bounces, then it goes to 4, then it goes to 8, and it just like keeps multiplying, right? And it bounces and bounces, and like everything does healing or damage. If you want it to do damage, you can make it do damage. Like how cool is that? Like how fucking diverse. Like that's so awesome.
And similar.
And every one of those spells, as he's talking about, has a very specific, like, you know, they can all be generally useful, but like they can all specialize in specific scenarios depending on like the positioning of the raid or what kind of damage event you're facing, and that's so cool to like kind of have the ability to kind of min-max what you're going to be doing per encounter.
To Rest of Trauma with Healing Rain, these spells are so incredibly efficient and so high HPS, as you can see on these charts, that pressing them on cooldown and optimizing the value you get out of them, minimizing their overhealing and all that, is going to be very, very crucial to our overall HPS. And similar to Holy Fire and Penance, it can be sometimes even correct to delay filler casts just to increase our CPM on these and make sure we hit them on cooldown, exactly on cooldown, especially on fights with more rot healing. However, because Divine Aegis reduces our overhealing to such a large extent, pushing these on cooldown even when they're going to mostly overheal is usually still correct, unless you're delaying them only for a few seconds to line up with a damage instance. The massive power of these short cooldowns relative to our filler as well contributes to the very low value of Spirit and high value of stats like Critical Strike, Mastery, and Intellect. Alright, so those are our talents. Now I'm going to go through a very quick priority list / rotation. So first of all here for buffs, we want to maintain Inner Fire. Obviously this shouldn't ever drop. It has no duration or anything, but useful to have a weak aura to tell you if it's not up in case you forget. Pre-pull, we actually do have some stuff we should be doing. First thing is we obviously want to pre-pot Intellect. This is just a huge amount of DPS.
Shit! Ask a friendly warlock to tap below twist threshold. What the fuck, bro? We got more pre-pull shit. Are you fucking kidding me, man? Pre-shell with... Oh my god, bro. Dude, priests are gonna be so annoying to play fucking pre-pull. Holy shit, dude. I'm gonna be fun. Hey, Mr. Warlock, can you please life tap below 30% so I can get my Twist of Fate, please?
Value with our Bender and our just Opener and Lust. We also should ask a friendly Warlock to life tap below 35% so that on pull, you know, our first Holy Fire, Smite, and Penance will Smart Heal them and proc Twist of Fate on us. This is huge, right? 15% more damage in your full Opener for 10 seconds is going to be really, really nice. We should also pre-shield with Divine Aegis and Power Word Shield if applicable. So we can either, you know, pre-Spirit Shell if there's like a big burst of damage in the first 15 seconds. Usually there's not, though. So what we can do is just, you know, Penance and stack some Divine Aegis on the tank, potentially. Put some pre-powered shields on the tank. Just a tiny little bit of free value there. Last of all, we want to bend
So what is he saying? Pre-shield with Divine Aegis and Power
there's like a
Shield.
big burst of damage in the first 15 seconds. Usually there's not though, so what we can do is just, you know, penance and stack some Divine Aegis on the tank potentially, put some pre-powered shields on the tank, just a tiny little bit of free value there. Last of all, we want to Bender on pull. If we don't have Bender and we're playing Shadow Fiend, you want to delay it slightly so that, you know, we can get some of our mana missing with some smites inside of Lust before we send our Fiend so we don't overcap on mana. Alright, so that's pre-pull. Now, our first priority is going to be to use our cooldowns. So Spirit Shell, when in doubt, don't send this on cooldown unless the fight is like pure rot damage, in which case you can kind of just send this on cooldown to make your Prayer of Healing have 0 overhealing. It's most impactful when it's negating burst damage or tank busters. Barrier, ideally, obviously, we use this on the raid stack, but don't let it sit on cooldown. If the raid isn't stacked, you can always send it on the tanks or on the melee. Life Swap, this is a very important one not to forget. A lot of priests forget this, and it is a new ability, so just keep it in your mind that you can basically lay on hands anyone every 5 minutes. Lastly, Mana Him. Use this with your first Bender or Fiend that won't have you overcapping mana. Also try to pay attention to the other healer's mana and use this when they aren't overcapping as well. Also, the mana pool increase can be paired with like Plea and Innervate to boost those effects, so call out when you're mana hemming. So those are our cooldowns. Now we're into
Wait a second.
to boost those effects, so call out when you're mana hemming. So those are our cooldowns. Plea and use this when they aren't overcapping as well. Also, the mana pool increase can be paired with like Plea and Innervate to boost those effects, so call out when you're mana hemming. So those are our cooldowns. Now we're into the filler stuff. So the first thing we want to do is press our 90 row as close to on cooldown as we can while remaining fully effective. Again, just our most impactful spells by a huge mile. The second thing we want to do is keep penance on cooldown. Both aggressive and defensive penance are very, very high priority. And again, even sometimes delaying filler casts. For example, if we're smiting and the next penance is less than a 1.5 second cooldown, we want to stop, delay, and then press penance on cooldown. The same thing goes for Holy Fire, which is going to be our next priority. Next, Archangel. So Archangel is similar to Cataclysm, where it's going to consume all your Evangelism stacks to give you 5% healing buff per stack. This is more healing than in Cataclysm, but it also no longer restores mana on cast. So that means that we're less punished for holding this. Generally, you want to use it on cooldown, but again, because it no longer restores mana, you're more likely to want to delay this a little bit to line up with like a big burst of damage. Our next priority is going to be Inner Focus. We're either going to be using this on CD with something like a Prayer of Healing just to generate some guaranteed Divine Aegis and a nice crit and some mana reduction, or for burstier fights, we can save it for our Spirit Shell windows. Our next priority is Rapture. So Rapture, again, no longer restores positive mana, it just refunds the cost of the Power Word Shield, so it's a lot less important to keep this on cooldown than in Cataclysm or Wrath of the Lich King, but it is still just completely free single target healing. Generally speaking, if you just cast this on cooldown on the tank, you'll get close to maximum value. Our next priority is going to be Prayer of Mending. This is very strong at 2 to 3 plus bounces. Try to let it expend its charges before you recast. Tracking this on your weak auras and on your raid frames is going to give you some extra value by, again, allowing you to only recast it if it's stuck or if it's expended all of its charges. For spot healing, we have Power Word Shield and Binding Heal about equivalent. Binding Heal obviously only really good if both you and the target have taken damage. With the glyph that boosts its first bounce is actually very effective. Spot healing, it's instant cast, it has some travel time, but it will do a nice chunk of healing very mana efficiently. Flash Heal is our next best spot heal. It's significantly worse compared to Greater Heal, but Greater Heal just has such a slow cast time, and we're so likely to get sniped on it by other healers that have better and more quick spot healing that I feel like Flash Heal is just generically better for any emergency where the target has weak soul and you don't have like a Palm, or Palm isn't going to be fast enough. And then of course all these things are infinitely better than Heal, which we should never cast. For filler, we have two real options here, being Smite and Prayer of Healing. Smite is going to be a damage focus filler that's very low HPM and HPCT. It's Smart Heals, which is a nice upside, and it also is more likely to proc Twist, again because it does Smart Heal, whereas POH is going to be an HPS-focused filler with much higher HPM and HPCT than Smite. Optimal filler for most fights will include non-zero casts of both POH and Smite, and generally speaking, similar to Cataclysm, we're going to be smiting enough that we don't but optimize our damage, and then using our Archangel to boost POH for high bursts of damage. Alright, so how do we compare the damage and HPS gain of like full filling with Smite versus POH? So on the sim here, I did some like different types of priorities and casting patterns. I did like a full smite where you fill all your extra mana with smite, and then a full POH where you smite just enough to keep your Archangel up consistently, and then use all your extra mana with POH. So these are sort of like the extreme examples. So here I'm comparing a generic Twist of Fate plus Divine Star setup and looking at the HPS you gain, full POH versus full smite versus the DPS you lose. And you gain about 20k HPS for about 13k DPS. So in the extreme where you exchange all your smites for POHs, you gain about like 1.6 HPS per point of lost DPS. Percentage-wise, the exchange is about like a 15% increase in your overall HPS for a 24% reduction in your damage. So point for point, it's like a decent exchange rate. Percentage-wise, you are losing quite a bit of DPS. However, these are the extremes, right? You're generally going to land somewhere in the middle, and generally speaking, a little bit closer to the smite side of the spectrum, given that you really only want to be POHing when you can get 3+ targets. So unless the fight is very rot damage heavy, you're mostly going to be concentrating those prayer of healings inside of damage windows. Now I'm going to really quickly go over glyphs, so there's not a lot of super relevant high impact glyphs for discipline.
So kind of a similar playstyle, but with a little bit more added on. So I basically am doing the same things I'm used to, where, you know, Holy Fire on cooldown, keeping up 5 stacks of evangelism, making sure I get my, you know, like certain spells off cooldown, right? Like penance and prayer mending and getting rapture procs, and then like, but then you have this new 90 talent that's going to be added in, which I'm not really going to even get to experience for a while, right? Like another month. So guess we will see. It's gonna be fun. I'm actually really excited. Plus new cooldowns like Spirit Shell and stuff. Let's see what he's gonna talk about with the glyphs here.
Priest, honestly, Binding Heal, this is more of a holy glyph, but still sometimes useful in situations where we do want to heal like 3 players, including ourselves. So like in Mogushon Vault's the boss that sends you to the underworld with the like voodoo totems, sometimes it's going to be good there. The Glyph of Holy Fire, this is very powerful. It's going to give us 40-yard range on all of our atonement spells. This is massive quality of life, and honestly I just wouldn't play the spec without this because it feels so bad. It also can increase throughput by increasing our uptime, but that's hard to estimate. Focus Mending is a really weird one. This causes your palm to only be able to bounce between you and the target. This doesn't increase the overall healing of palm, but like maybe it's potentially useful for tank healing if you can take regular avoidable damage. It's also maybe nice for like cheesing HPS on parses if you want to stand in fire or something, but overall not useful. Glyph of Power Word Shield, this is one that got severely nerfed in Mists of Pandaria. What this does is, instead of giving you 20% of the shield as extra healing like it did before, now it converts some of the absorb into direct healing. So your overall healing with the spell is exactly the same with this. One thing that could happen in private servers, what would be the case is that when you pressed it, you would get the heal, and that heal could crit. And of course, the Power Word Shield can crit, so you can get a double value from Power Word Shield. You'd get a double glyph value, and then that double glyph value could itself crit, so you'd be like double dipping. That can't happen on beta, and I'm looking through old logs, it's like not supposed to happen. So on private server, this was a significant HPS increase if your crit was very high, but for us it's 0. Glyph of Prayer of Mending, as I mentioned before, this is the glyph that boosts the first bounce of your palm by 60%, but reduces its charges by 1. I would generically try to take this most of the time. It makes your palm a good like spot tank heal on the move, and if you only ever get 3 bounces from your palm, this is going to be a very significant HPS increase. Glyph of Dispel is pretty much a PvP thing, but potentially usable on Sulong. Renew, pretty much useless. Smite is...
So what are we thinking here? Prayer Mending and the one that gives me the 40-yard range.
An interesting one. So this has the same effect that it did in Cataclysm, where it will boost the damage of your Smite spell against targets that have the Holy Fire dot on them by 20%. However, this is significantly nerfed in this version of the game where that extra damage does not translate into atonement healing, so this is just a pure damage increase. If you use a balanced HPS rotation, this is going to be like about a 4% DPS increase, so pretty strong. Next we have Glyph of Penance. This will increase the mana cost of...
So we're thinking Penance, we're thinking Mending, and we're thinking probably the other one that gives me 40-yard range.
Penance by 20%, so that's pretty significant, but will allow us to cast Penance while moving. So you can see we can cast Penance while moving. This is incredible quality of life. It's also a, uptime increase if you have to move a huge amount.
I don't know if I'm gonna take this, honestly.
The problem with this is that it is like a significant DPS and HPS loss. It's about 2.5% DPS if you use the extra mana on Smite, and HPS it's like 1.3% loss. So ideally you don't want to take this. It's kind of like the lightning bolt glyph in Cataclysm, where if you were a shaman on the fights where you needed the movement on lightning bolt, you'd take the glyph, but otherwise you take the 4% increased damage. If you want to just like vibe and relax and play the game without having to worry about optimizing your uptime too much, you can always take this glyph and it's just fine. Next we have Inner Fire and Inner Sanctum. These are two defensive.
All right, so what kind of glyph? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? You know, and I keep getting logged off because I'm staying logged out for so long. But I want to kind of follow along, you know, so I don't forget. I think we're gonna probably forego the penance glyph and maybe just do. Well, we're gonna have to look at our options again. Oh, he's not done looking at him. We can soul range palm. That's what he's saying. Interesting. He's got little setups for it. Okay. So if we go to glyphs, palm for sure. I really like this one. Why is it not working? I don't understand. Dude, the glyph UI is fucking bugging out, bro.
Glyphs. One will buff.
Do I not have? Dude, there's so many glyphs I don't have, actually. That's crazy. Weaken soul. Reduces duration of weakened soul caused by power shield by 2 seconds. Dang, what are all these cannons here? I need some inscriptions. Well, I can't even apply them for some reason. So, you have problems with that? Like, I'm trying to put a glyph on, it won't work. I just logged in. Stuff is fucking broken, man. Reload? Okay. Stuff is hella broken. Alright, open my glyphs. I'm gonna put on prayer mending. No, I'm not. Not putting on prayer mending at all. It's fucking stupid, bro. I gotta turn off every add-on or what? What do we think it is? I guess I could go through and kind of make a... So do we want DBM? Yeah. We want addy bags? Yeah. All the things. I think generally I do want all the things. Atlas loot, auctionator, we're gonna want... we're gonna want sell, we're gonna want... I want to save this set here, okay. So is there anything I need to turn off here? Foji, no. LUI, okay, Leatrix. I think Leatrix might be bugged, but it seems like they might have fixed it. Most of the stuff I'm kind of okay with keeping. Plater. We're going to try to swap the plater instead of threat plates. Tom. I don't really need. I guess I could turn off Camel Spotter and Tom. Trade skill master. We want that. Vigoras. Okay. All right. So we're going to create a new set. Standard. I want to delete these other ones here just because I don't know what they'd be looking like anymore. Well, it's not even fucking working, so. Okay, so we're going to disable all add-ons. Just so I can fucking put some glyphs on. So I'm in prayer mending. We need the one that gives me the range. It's called Holy Fire. It doesn't increase the range of Smite, though. Oh, wait, no. Well, let's pull up the video again.
The armor from your inner fire. Have inner worry about optimizing your uptime too much, you can always take this glyph and it's just fine. Play the game, take the glyph, but otherwise you take the 4% increased damage. If you want to just like vibe and relax and play the game without having to worry about optimizing your uptime too much, you can always take this glyph and it's just fine. Increase if you only ever proc your rapture matter. The range, and you're going to take one take for damage, you're going to take your smite glyph, you're going to take range, and you're going to take one of your defensive options, Inner Sanctum or Inner Fire. For maximum healing, you take probably something like Weak Soul, Range, and Palm. For fights where the range doesn't matter, you can replace it with something like Glyph of Penance. And if you don't care about the defensiveness, you can always take Penance instead, or potentially Weak Soul, something else. Although the overall impact from these glyphs is just very, very small, so you really can't go too wrong. Alright, so I'm going to talk about stats and stats.
Alright, so I gotta figure out which glyphs I'm gonna buy. I think we need the Weakened Soul one. So, Weakened Soul. Of course. Did I spell that wrong? I did. 50 gold, no biggie. Alright, and then the range one. I think is Holy Fire. Just double checking. There's Renew. Paramending, Penance. Yeah, looks like it's Holy Fire. So we're gonna do that one. 50 gold. Alright, what are some other combos?
That is just very, very,
So he was saying
very small, so you really can't go.
Inner Sanctum. Do we have that one? We do. Spell damage taken and reduced by 6% with an Inner Fire, movement speed bonus. Okay. Guess the bigger question would be is there's any of these ones that I want to take right away. I feel like the only real one I'm going to need is like for PvP. All right. Let's get our glyphs. Oh my god, we're lagging. Okay, we're learning this one. We're learning this one. Weakened Soul, which basically just gives us better. And then we'll do Holy Fire. Gives us longer range. And then for minor glyphs, it doesn't really matter. I don't know if any of these actually matter. It's like purely visual, right? Okay. I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back, guys. I gotta go pee. All right, I'm back. I have returned. Okay. So, we got a little bit more of this video. We might as well finish it out. See what they say.
And if you don't care about the defensiveness, you can always take penance instead, or potentially weak soul, something else. Although the overall impact from these glyphs is just very, very small, so you really can't go too wrong. Alright, so I'm going to talk about stats and stat weights. So this sheet is based on like a loose phase 1 BIS setup. If you want to calculate your stat weight specifically, you can either do it manually or you can put your stats in here and it'll show you, although these should be relatively close for most of the expansion. The only thing is that as we get more and more gear, intellect will become a little bit less valuable. Intellect is both our best stat for HPS, and also it's a very strong stat for DPS. However, Spirit is actually a little bit stronger point for point for DPS, but Spirit is a very, very weak stat for HPS, and you can only...
Wait, Spirit is good for DPS? What the heck? Why?
Actualize this DPS value if you spend all the extra mana on Smite. If you're wondering...
You're just saying mana?
About how Spirit works, I did make a whole video on that, so I'm not going to go through it all here. Haste is effectively useless for us for both DPS and HPS because we're mana limited and we don't have any useful breakpoints. There are some breakpoints for Fiend and Bender extra attacks, but they're so infinitesimally small it doesn't really matter. Also, the Holy Fire Dot has some breakpoints, but again, it's so tiny that it doesn't really matter. Also, even if we make ourselves completely mana unlimited, let's say we give ourselves like a trillion Spirit, and then we recalculate our stat weights. Even if our mana is completely unlimited, haste is still a very poor HPS stat and still about the same as intellect in terms of DPS. When it comes to crit versus mastery, mastery you can see is actually significantly better than crit for HPS. The reason I would recommend stacking crit versus mastery is that while crit again is lower HPS, it also has some effect on DPS, whereas mastery has zero effect on DPS. And crit will also have like a qualitative benefit by increasing your likelihood of generating Divine Aegis, as well as increasing your likelihood to refresh pre-existing Divine Aegises, especially with stuff like Divine Star, anything that's AoE that's hitting a bunch of players in the raid. Although if you are just 100% optimizing for HPS and you don't care about your damage, mastery will outcompete crit. It's very important for us to have as close to zero haste on our gear as possible, honestly, and so Spirit's going to be our third stat. Spirit is actually very good for DPS compared to all of our other secondaries, but
So we want to go intellect, crit, mastery, or intellect, crit, spirit, mastery as our prio.
The sacrifice we make in terms of HPS is just quite significant, so while Spirit isn't bad by any means, we definitely want to minimize the amount we have on our gear. However, you know, it's infinitely more valuable than haste. When it comes to our set bonuses are actually very, very weak, especially post-nerf, where we get the 1 second CD reduction instead of a 3. Our 2 set is just mana cost on Flash Heal, so it's kind of worthless, and our 4 set used to be like a 6% HPS and 17% DPS increase. Now it's 1.4 and about 5. So 5% damage is like okay, right? But we really don't care too much about our tier anymore. We really just want to minimize our haste on our gear as much as possible. So you're fine with off pieces. For gems, for our meta, we want crit all the time. It's 3 times more healing than mana and equivalent DPS. For red and yellow sockets, we want int and int crit. Generally speaking, socket bonuses that are like crit, mastery, or intellect are probably going to be worth it. For blue,
we want int and int crit. Okay.
More healing than mana and equivalent DPS. For red and yellow sockets, we want int and int crit. Generally speaking, socket bonuses that are like crit, mastery, or intellect are probably going to be worth it. For blue sockets, generally the socket bonuses won't be worth it, but if it is, you want like in spirit. For professions, any 2 main stat professions will be just fine. Engineering is going to be BIS just because of nitro boots, although the fact that we have feather makes nitro boots a lot less important. The alchemy stone is very strong previous for us.
True, guys. I'm not an engineer. What am I? I'm an alchemist. JC Alch Leatherworking Enchant Script. What the hell is this guy talking about?
With a feather just fine. Worth it, but if it is, you want like in spirit. For professions, any 2 main stat professions will be just fine. Engineering is going to be BIS just because of nitro boots, although the fact that we have feather makes nitro boots a lot less important. The alchemy stone is very strong previous for us with a big...
Guys, I'm an alchemist.
mastery plus a huge int proc that lines up pretty well with our bender. Leatherworking for drums of speed is obviously nice, and super late game blacksmithing will allow us to get like crit gems or mastery gems instead of intellect gems, but the benefit there is going to be infinitesimally small. The other thing to mention is tailoring here. So tailoring, the ICD is like close to a minute, so it should line up relatively well with our bender. And I did the math here where like NG gloves lining up perfectly with bender. This is going to give us like 300 extra DPS on our bender on average. And tailoring cloak, again, if it lines up perfectly with your bender, which you might have to delay a little bit to get it to work, will be like 500 extra DPS on bender. So a nice little boost there. So if you really do care about just purely DPS, you probably want to go tailoring engineering. Late game, however, early game, I would just prioritize alchemy. You'll also get some nice gold from alchemy with the transmutes. For racials,
Really?
we have access to Pandarin Priest now, so both Alliance and Horde can go Pandarin. The double food buff is going to give you 300 in intellect, which is really, really strong early on. It's also very strong for damage. The only other real option for Alliance is going to be Worgen, which is 1% crit or 600.
Guys, what about Night Elf? Shit. No, I can't not be Night Elf, guys.
Crit rating. Very late game, this will probably do more healing than the intellect from Panda, but I think even then it's going to be doing a little bit less damage, so they're basically equivalent, Worgen versus Panda. Human, the 3% spirit's just very bad. Gnome, the extra mana is actually decent, but
So you're telling me that Pandas... Wait, Draenei looks crazy good. What the fuck?
it's just worse than Panda and Worgen. Dwarf and Nelf have like 0 benefit, and Draenei will do a slight amount of HPS increase if you use your...
You might swap Suwu to Panda. What? Really? Holy shit, Dan. I've never been a fan of race swapping for benefit, for like whatever the flavor of the month benefit is. It just feels like so low value most of the time. I'm not. I am kind of I kind of am like a little bit like tempted to be a Draenei, because Draenei's are cool. Like I actually like Draenei's.
Stupid hot. For Horde,
Food
we
buff
have a
is
lot of options.
insane.
Obviously, Panda
Dude, Panda looks crazy.
still available to us. Very powerful. We have Undead. The Undead like damage proc thing is actually not terrible. So if you want to go Undead for PvP, Troll, we get the 20% haste. Obviously, this does nothing for our healing really. It can line up with like Spirit Shell. If you sync it with Bender, it will give you a little bit of mana, and obviously using it inside of our procs and cooldowns will give us some extra damage, but in terms of HPS, this is like very, very minimal impact. For the few bosses that are beasts, this is going to be incredible because of 5% extra damage to beasts. Tauren, obviously just a troll race, but with Bulwark, we actually do get like 22 HPS.
Holy shit.
HP. Blood Elf is going to give us like 440 spirit, which is going to be, 460 HPS and 460 DPS. Goblin, the haste basically worthless, but the rocket jump is nice. So generically, I would go Panda, and for Alliance, Panda or Worgen. However, if you do plan to flex DPS at all, you can just go Troll on Horde and not really lose too much. To very quickly go over consumes, we just always want Intellect Flask. Some of the written guides from private servers recommend you using like Spirit Food and Spirit Flask early. That's just like completely wrong. On a 5-minute fight, an Intellect Pod's going to give us 222 average Intellect, which is 1000 HPS and 450 DPS. A Conch Pot's going to give us 625 MP5, 1100 HPS, and 1375 DPS. So the healing you get's actually the same, but the mana is going to give you more DPS, again, if you use that mana to smite with. So while overall the difference is not huge, I think if you do have the downtime to sit a concentration pot, it's worth doing. Now to close off the video, I want to mention a few very quick UI and macro tips. First of all, for your raid frames, a few things you want to track are going to be Weak Soul, especially for the tank, your Prayer of Mending, and your Spirit Shell buff, and potentially even your Divine Aegis. Having a weak aura to track Rapture is a lot less important, although still useful. Make sure you have a weak aura that has your mana bar and all of your major cooldowns centrally located on your screen. When it comes to macros, one thing I really like is a mouse over life grip, so that if you see someone in danger, you don't have to click on them and life grip or life grip off your raid frames. You can just spam it while hovering over them. At cursor and at player for barrier are quite nice. For our atonement spells, target harm macros that will cast your Holy Fire, Penance, and Smite on an enemy target, regardless of who you're targeting, can be very, very useful.
Yeah.
However, for Penance that we primarily want to be using to do damage, but also sometimes want to...
I know, bro. Double Zug is the GOAT, bro. Tell him to go DPS. Double Zug is the GOAT. Dude, he, like, look at all the fucking numbers, bro. And I like this. Like maybe that some people find this mundane, but it feels so convincing to have the math in front of you, you know? Like why should you use this? Why should you use this? Because of the fucking numbers, dude. Like and I love the way he definitely has like a very like I don't know. He's not popular at all. Like this video has only got 8K views. Like, you know, I wish he needs to blow up because he is like definitely the most insane resource for a priest right now.
To use defensively, having a second bind or a modifier to use defensive penance and the default being offensive can also be quite a useful macro to have. If you don't want to micromanage your inner focus, it's safe to simply macro it into your prayer of healing. And the general rule of thumb for all healers still applies that you should be using click casting and mouse overs whenever possible. So that's the guide. Thanks for sitting through all that yapping. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'll be coming out with guides for every single healer spec in the weeks between now and launch. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments, or you can join my Discord channel where we do like log reviews and talk about all the specs. Also, again, all the sheets for all my guys are available in my Discord. So that's that. Thanks for watching. See ya.
Let's look at his sheet. Oh, it says it's available in his Discord. I'm pretty sure I am in his Discord. Double Zug. Scuffed disc pack. Log reviews. General. I want his macros. Yeah, I want to see.
Swobu are available now and launch. If you have any,
All right, let's kind of see his macros.
it's worth doing. Names, a few things you want to track are going to be weak soul, especially for the tank. Having it as yours is one thing. I have to click at macros that will cast your Holy Fire, Penance, and Smite on an enemy target, regardless of who you're targeting, can be very, very useful. However, for Penance that we primarily want to be using to do damage, but also sometimes want to use defensively, having a second bind or a modifier to use defensive penance and the
Yeah, so I might have to log on to the beta or something to get the macro that I was using. Because I spent so much fucking time setting all that shit up. At some point, can you go over my hunter setup with me? I haven't touched my hunter yet. I mean, sure. I mean, I haven't really spent a lot of time on it either. But yeah, I mean, I guess I can for sure. I can give you the resources and what I'm gonna be doing. But there's a lot that I need to like look into there as well. Add-ons, sets. Let's just go ahead and load our add-ons back up. And let's take a look at our keybinds and stuff here. So I'm pretty sure I have a keybind sheet right here. Just gonna go ahead and throw this up over here. Just to make sure that I am got everything good. Okay. So first things first, power word shield. We need a power word shield macro. This is mouse over. This is like kind of whatever. I think that should be pretty useful. All right, and then we got smite. Smite doesn't need anything crazy. Number 3 is going to be flash heal, which we should have a macro for. Okay. Number 4 is going to be heal, which I don't think is going to have any use, but the fact is that I want to have it for any sort of like, if I have to play holy, I'm pretty sure this spell has like some use in holy. So 5 and 6 is Mind Seer. Q is going to be my Shadow Fiend. All right. So that's all good. E is Prayer of Healing. So we got Prayer of Healing with Inner Focus macro into it. All good. All right. And then R is going to be Penance. So how does this work? If I want to penance the enemy, is this going to penance the enemy? Let's go see. Let me think. Hunter stuff. How can we go over hunter stuff with you? I mean, I could just basically, like, what do you want to know? Like, what talents to run? A rotation? Stuff like that? Okay, so it is penancing my targets. But if I have a mouse over, it won't penance my mouse over unless it's a friendly target. So if I have a mouse over, it will penance them. All right, sounds good. Okay, cool. That's good enough for me. What level is your monk? You're 58. Not bad. Okay, so we need renew now. So we're going to go to macros. We're going to find renew. G is usually my mind control. Creepy, what the fuck? How did you know that? I slash hood. It says it in my chat. So I think we're going to do void tendrils as either G or shift G. That should work. Yo, what's up, Ozzo? Hey, man. How's it going? You guys want to listen to some music? Let me put some music on. Let me see if it works. We're just we're setting up our priest right now. Then we're gonna do some dungeons. Let's see. What kind of music do we want to listen to, guys? Ooh, I'm seeing a lot of cool YouTube videos that I want to watch. I'll just put on some put on this again. Okay. Music should be playing. How are you doing, Ozzo? What are you up to today, man? All right, so shift 1. Oh, we got res, right? Yeah, we got res and mouse res. Okay, and dispel. So we want dispel and mass dispel to be C and shift C. So let's go find our macros. I don't know why it like removes all my macros from my bar. Oh, it's a different spell now, isn't it? Wait, and dispel magic is completely different. Okay. So we got mass dispel there. So let's look at our dispel button. This is a weird one, man. I don't know what to do about this. Because now I have offensive dispel and just regular dispel. Whereas before that was the same spell. So it's just purify now. Okay. So we're gonna name this macro purify. I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna do. You're in a meh mood. That's understandable. It's a meh kind of day, you know? Happy July 4th, guys. Do you guys do anything for the 4th? So we got our fear keybind. We got our spell. We got, I don't know, V is shackle maybe? Pour one out for the demise of our country. Yep. Spirit shell. Do we want to put spirit shell? Our entire lawn was on our front yard. Our front lawn. Our entire town was on our front lawn. Dang. How many people is that? What the heck? Fuse the target with vitality. All right, shift 1. We want the life grip. Where's life grip? I know I have a life grip macro. I wish I could search my macros. I'm pretty sure I have a life grip macro. What? Why? Why is it cast at player Archangel? You have parade. Our house is on the route. Oh, that's cool. All right. Well, we don't need a holy fire macro anymore. We should probably be deleting this shit, huh? Extra action button. We do want that. There's our leap of faith. Can't grab anybody, obviously, that isn't in the game or in our group. We don't really care about PI anymore. Is Spirit Shell in the same? Nah, I'm probably never going to play PI. Whether or not we want to put Spirit Shell there is another question. I don't know. Self-dispel. Shadow of Death. All right, we got Trinket 1. Trinket 2. I don't know if we're going to end up using these or not. Our bars are kind of a mess, but we've been hiding them, so it doesn't really matter. Have you been doing any stuff in the pre-patch, Hazo? Okay, Spirit Shell. Spirit Shell. I don't know if I'm going to keep this on X. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dang, we got 7 cast off. 100,000 absorb. Your panda's 30? That's my panda's not quite 30. My panda's like, what is my panda? I think my panda's like 22, 23. I haven't played a ton. I haven't played my panda a ton. Doink over here. Doink is almost level 60 on his panda. He's grinding. All right, let's see. You want to be the first monk in the guild? Well, someone already boosted, right? I guess besides... Oh, natural. Natural monk, okay. All right, so we need holy fire. I don't think we need a macro for this anymore. But maybe in the future we'll macro it to something. Holy fire. Shift 3, we're gonna do probably, well, we don't have him anymore. That'll be our level 90 talent. Binding heal, shift 4. This macro has always been kind of weird, honestly. If I press it, yeah. I guess I need a target. Like, I can't self-cast this one. All right, shift 5. Do we have mana burn anymore? I don't know if we do. I don't think we do. Wait, do we have mana burn? I don't see any mana burn. I never use a boost unless it's a meme. All like a red paladin. Not even like the free boosts. Like you don't. Like sometimes you get a free boost. I have a free boost right now. I gotta figure out what I'm gonna use. Yeah, I got a free one. I got this boost for free. Boom. Level 85. Where are we going? I need the time with my team to get them to know them. I respect it. I respect it, dude. So are you playing Windwalker, Doink? Or have you been tanking? Do you like it so far? All right, we need a keybind for barrier. What am I doing for barrier? It's not shift mouse, dude. It's shift mouse 4. My main threat generator is lobbing booze at NPCs. Brewmaster's a lot of fun. Windwalker is fun, but Brewmaster's definitely OP spec right now. Really? Is it OP? So you're in the dungeons and shit, it's just like carrying or what? I need to figure out where all my barrier's gonna go, man. Have 50 mobs on them, topping DPS meters. Yeah, that sounds about right. So where do I usually have my fear word as? Control 4. We have Fort on control 1, 3. Shadow Prod is gone now. Levitate control 1. Is that right? Oh, my streamer bot's off, dude. I had to restart my computer. Hey, Gary, what's up, dude? I'll do it for you. Boom. Now I'm hate watching. Why didn't it work?
It's not personal.
I'm gonna kill myself!
There you go.
Wow.
I'm going to kill myself, and it's your fault!
Who drops Hailstorm? Okay, let's figure this out. So, Dungeons, Wrath, Gundrak. Right there. You need to do the either alpha or beta last boss of Gundrak. Just found it? Okay. All right, so we don't need anything on control 1, control 2, control 3, control 4. I don't think I have Shadow Prot anymore. What is that? I guess that's the new flying, huh? No more Shadow Prot. All right. Dang, I don't have Void Shift right now. Okay, so Pain Sup, Prayer of Healing, Prayer of Mending, Purify, Power Word Shield, Renew, all good. Okay. I gotta. What did I have my barrier as, man? Time to go mindlessly kill shit in Last Epoch. Dude, that game is so fun. All right, man. Have a good one. I actually love Last Epoch. I'm excited for their new season. I don't see the keybind here. What would I usually do it as? Too new for builds. Necro Lich. Well, what ability have you been using mostly? Like, what ability have you been like leaning in and playing with the most? All right, alt 2 is going to be Desperate Prayer. Alt 3, alt 4. We swap between Inner Will, Inner Fire. Rip Blood, Skeletons, Reaper. That sounds fun. I like that one on Necro, the Sithonic Fissure or whatever you. That one's crazy, where you like open up the line and it shoots out like fucking chaos bolts and shadow bolts and shit and bleeds everything. That one looks pretty cool. So we are pretty much good to go here. Sacred Fire helped me download the proper loot filters. Yeah, that's kind of a learning curve in that game, is figuring out the loot filters. I gotta set up my feathers. Well, you don't have to. I really feel like Last Epoch is kind of a game where you don't need to do that. I would just focus on, you know, if you get stuck and you need to be stronger, then you could do something like that. But just keep doing you, man. That's what I think you should do. I guess I don't have a wand anymore, huh? How does that work? I almost wonder if I should change my stances to be a little bit more consistent here. But then I don't know what I'm going to do with Shadowward Bane. All right, we need some feather macros. All right. Feather. Self. Save. Damn, my fucking keybinds are all over the place, huh? Feather. Cursor. All right. Feather my... Oh. Feather ourself. And then we want to be like, I want to feather that guy. We're going to feather this guy right here. Feather this guy. Life grip. Trying to figure out, like, you ever have that moment where your keybind doesn't make sense to your brain? Like, I'm trying to remember what I had something keybind as, and I would always just press it. I don't remember what it was. And I'm trying to, like, is that right? Am I pressing the right bind? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, damn, what was my fucking barrier keybind? And I'm pressing it and I'm like, all right, I'm trying to think, like, okay, barrier. And it doesn't make sense in my brain. Am I into something and it's wrong? This feels off, dude. What the fuck is my barrier? I think it's Alt 4. Alt mouse button 4. I'm like, barrier. Okay, I'm barriering. Okay, barrier's down. Is that right? Like, why did my keybinds all disappear? You know? I think this is right. All right, it's time to do a dungeon. My scuffed ass fucking bars. Twilight. Healer. See what we can find. That's a problem. What can we do while we wait? 7-minute queue for a healer? Guys, what's going on? That's fucking crazy. Oh, you know what? Check this out. I can now be a Loon Dion. The Insane. Holy fuck. That's badass. I'm hyped about that title being account wide now. That's fucking sick. I don't think I was immortal or undying on this character. Is that now account wide as well? Do you have immortal and undying on your monk doink? Should probably go this one. You're on track? Oh. Okay, well then it must be account wide. All right, let's do a raid. Let's do a dungeon. Everybody. Oh. We got some overlapping frames here. Unit frames. Group units. Movers. Fuck. I just need to get rid of these. And these. Lock. Cancel. Well, this is bad. Oh no, I'm gonna have to redo. Oh man, I'm gonna have to redo all my wait, what? It just doesn't show prayer mini. Oh, there it goes. Okay, let's practice. Okay. Oh my god, it's so weird. I'm gonna have to get used to freaking. Tenants. Oh, I don't have a weak core right now. Let's do a nice little prayer mending. Okay. Shadow Fiend. I guess I'll solo the Mana Void. Whoa, everyone's dying. Oh fuck, I don't have this.
What brings you here?
What do I do as a healer? Isn't it bronze?
Farewell.
I don't remember. But didn't Double Zug say haste is terrible for me? Oh, we get to try our feathers. What is going on? My feathers are all the way at the bottom. Can I levitate and mount? No. All right, I'm here, guys. It's not showing the power word shield. I need a different ID for that one. ID 17. I don't see 6, 7. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to fix our cell a little bit. You got Razor, Slice, Talon, and Hailstorm. I don't even know what the razor slice talon looks like. Indicators. Healers. Where's power word shield? Wait, did I not have it on because I think I have a weak aura tracking it, maybe? It's gonna take some getting used to. I think we might actually go
You need something?
blue.
See you later.
Holy fuck, that guy is dead as fuck. Alright, two things. I need this priest weak aura. For priest. Copy. We need to remember to mind bender. Penance. I'm gonna try to stay still here. Damn, bro, I'm doing 50k. Oh, I'm attacking an immune target right now. Why did it just penance the fucking... Mistweaver monks are top of the meters on some fights. That sounds fun.
Is only the beginning. Winds of the south, rise and come to your master's aid.
Let me turn my audio down, man. I don't know why I have it up louder. Something that's gonna take a little bit of getting used to. Okay. Is using penance on cooldown. Because that's such a short cooldown. And it gets even shorter whenever I smite.
The sky beckons.
Dang, got all this stuff. All right, let's add this week, Cora. Dude, what? Oh, it's definitely Alt 1. It's not Alt 4. It's gonna take some getting used to. It's gonna take some getting used to. Where's my sound? Are you sure? Probably feels weird. I'm not sure, actually, but I think so. I think we're good now. All right, I think I can hide my bars now. All right, let's do another dungeon. Why is this the only mount that it's making me use right now? Never mind. Oh, do you see this? Do you have this mount, Doink? Do you have this one? Yeah, but what about this one? It's the Jade Pandaren Kite. If you go to 150 mounts, you gotta have 150 mounts. There's another one, isn't there? 200 mounts. I'm really close to 200 mounts, actually. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm at 152. What's the 200 mount called? Armored Blue Dragonhawk. It doesn't look that cool. The kite actually is kind of cool, though. I'm not a fan. I'm not too much of a fan. I don't like the Dragonhawks too much. How do you have 150 mounts? I don't know. I just have 150 mounts. There's a lot of mounts I still don't have. Maybe I don't have this one. I don't have all the Talbooks now. What is that from? That's a retail mount. What was that mount? Which one? The trike? This is the goblin racial mount. Or this one. This is a new engineering mount. Bloated dragon looking thing. Hey Fear, what's up, man? Bloated dragon looking thing. This? I mean, I don't know how you get this. Is it a shop mount? Here we go. Oh, we're doing this thing. $25. Okay.
Heroes, we have the dragon soul. The aspects await us within world.
High like brew.
Hurry, come with me. The dragon soul is not yours. Give it up, and you may yet walk away.
Oh man, I gotta get used to using penance. Dude, okay, do I have
How did they find us?
thread plates on?
Ready your weapon.
I do.
We've got to
Fucking
get out
hell,
of this
dude.
canyon.
I need to also change my power word shield.
Look out!
There we go, that looks better. Okay. We need to get used to always casting Holy Fire and Penance every time they're up. Because they're just insane.
Hurry! We must keep moving.
I also need...
Another ambush. Watch your back.
change cell a little bit. Alright, so we want to get rid of the... I don't want it to show... The fuck is all this shit, bro?
Take a moment to catch your breath before we move on. You will go nowhere.
Powered shield on raid frames, we don't want to show that. I want this to be through cell. Indicators.
Show yourself.
Utilities. Raid debuffs. Layouts. General.
Your place as the aspect.
I want the special power word shield.
You are a mere mortal.
Fuck, dude. Do we not have it anymore?
It is time you died like one. We're surrounded.
I think it's gone, man.
Ascended while I keep the ambushes at bay.
Okay, we're mind bendering. Oh fuck, that's the wrong thing. Okay, nice little dispel. Dispel that guy.
You've almost got him, Agnokar Loktar. Now,
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from, dude.
Ben discover. I know you're tired, but we cannot keep the aspects waiting.
I need. I guess I don't really need to know how much is left. Yes, I do. Dang it, bro. Would it be shield bar? I don't know what that is, one. AoE healing. I guess I gotta get power word shield on here. So item ID it is 17. So we're just gonna add it. 17. All right, let's see if that works. Okay, well, at least I can see power word shield on there. It did come out as a charity mount at first. I wonder if what they'll do now. Came out actual MoP, so maybe they haven't put into the game yet. Yeah, there's a couple of carryover ones like that, honestly. Like the recruiter friend mount, and some of the shop ones aren't in the game, you know? I'm pretty sure. And like TCG mounts and stuff. So I wonder if they will put them in. But they have a couple of cases like that. All right, let's do this. Yeah, throw those barrels. Okay. I think we kind of got our UI issues mostly fixed. I don't have a rapture tracker. Oh, yeah, we do.
Beware, enemies approach.
Okay. We're smiting. Shielding. Then we're going to go straight into penance. Holy fire. I'm just going to have to be very intentional about how I heal. Also, twist of fate, man. I need to remember that. That's something that's going to be very interesting. And probably like a big difference between just extra 15% damage and healing. That's going to be big.
Let none stand in our
Oh,
way.
shit, bro. All right, we're gonna spirit shell. Oh yeah, we're spirit shelling. Oh yeah. Get us 100k, guys. For nothing. We just need to kind of use our abilities, you know? I just need to get a feel for it. All right, I'm popping paints up. Okay, I'm popping barrier. All right, we snipe that with holy fire. We might need to change our holy fire keybind because it feels weird now. It feels weird. Because it's instant cast and before it was like long cast time.
Let them come.
All right, penance. Okay, like that. I need to snipe a low target. Okay, to get 15% extra healing and damage. And then I'm stunned. So we're gonna do a big heal here. We'll spirit shell a lot. Should be able to get 6 of these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, spirit shell's wearing off. I got 0 use out of it. But at least I have a feel for the duration. Okay. I'm gonna pop Shadow Fiend.
Quickly, ready yourselves for battle.
And we need a penance on cooldown. Penance coming up in 2. Penance. Okay, and then we holy fire right now. And then we pop Archangel. Penance again. Okay, we got Spirit Shell. So I'm just gonna go ahead and send it. Can't fucking do it apparently. Just gonna do it on myself. Getting silenced. No one's taking any fucking damage. Penance again. Worst fight in human history.
You're much better
A dagger.
than I thought.
I wonder if I win that if I get the transmog or not.
Well done. Let's see, friend.
Yeah, I can actually play real music now. And it won't fuck it up on YouTube. I haven't checked my YouTube stream in a while. It looks like it's still working fine. So I've streamed for 3.5 hours and I haven't had a single mess up. Wait. How the fuck did they get out? How the fuck did they teleport? Did they teleport out and back in or something? I was having a problem where I kept like disconnecting. And so I just redid my whole like setup to where I'm not using a restream anymore. I'm using something called Atium, which also lets me split up my audio. But I can't play copyright music if I'm streaming to YouTube. Through YouTube. But now, because I'm splitting my audio using this different streaming method, I can just play whatever the fuck I want. Alright, we're gonna Spirit Shell. So what I wonder is like, okay, let's say I have Spirit Shell going off. Should I still prioritize Penance Or should I only try to stack shell? That hits hard. Holy fuck. Okay, we're gonna mind vendor. What was I trying to do there? I think we're pretty much set up now, dude. I'm like not running out of mana either. Probably just my gear is crazy. Oh, I keep forgetting the penance, dude. All right, Spirit Shell seems like it's gonna be really so. Like, dude, I gotta get used to using feathers too. Feather on movement. Feather on movement. Okay, let's feather this guy. Get the feather. This is crazy. Look how fast I am, man.
And now, Shaman, you will give the dragon's soul to me.
I will not, Archbishop. It will never be yours.
I suppose it has to be this way then. If only you'd seen what I've seen. Then you'd understand.
I wish I had
You're a figurehead of the
my
light.
old power word shield tracker.
How could you betray your own?
All right, let's start stacking.
There is no good, no evil, no light. There is only power. We serve the world's true master.
No way this fight doesn't start within the next 3 seconds, right?
We will share in their glory. And you. We will feast on your now die.
We're doing crazy damn.
Witness my power. I looked into the eyes of
Dang.
the dragon.
Wait, Maw the Dragon Lord drops here too? Oh, I guess this is like one of the in-between dungeons. Cool. All right, well, I feel pretty comfortable now. I think I can play priest. Is there anything cool going on? Oh, there's a scenario. What's this thing? Have you guys done this? You get a tabard?
How are you?
I guess I should do it then, huh? We're not raiding tomorrow? I should let Lance know. Well, they posted a thing. Raid discussion, raid announcements. As mentioned in raid, we will not be raiding the week of 6/29. We will resume raiding the pre-patch the week of 7/6, 7/13. So yeah, we are raiding, I think, on 7/6 and 7/13. Hi, Marble. Marble got scared of the fireworks and the planes and stuff. She's sleeping under my bed. I think you can just post in the like the absence channel or whatever. How long does this take? 8 minutes. Dang, you're missing the first raid of MoP? What the heck? Oh, I have an update. Well, that was the main thing I wanted to do today, was get my priest sorted out. So we've got all of our glyphs, we got all of our keybinds, our macros, our UI, our talents, everything's set up, and I think I'm ready to raid. I just have to get used to playing, which is gonna be a lot of practice. Almost wonder if I should run Angelic Bulwark instead. I kind of like this one. Yeah, I think now would be a really good time for me to take a break, get some food. And I might come back a little bit later tonight and stream some either Diablo or maybe some more WoW stuff. Pahone is 41. I'm surprised he's actually leveling a character, man. The other thing I really wanted to test was to make sure that my stream was going to work. So I can kind of like, yeah, I want to get some food and I want to see if it actually worked. if it split up the audio and stuff. So I'll be back a little bit later, guys. Thank you guys for watching, and thanks for hanging out. I hope that was fun. I don't know if it was. It was basically just me setting up my UI on my priest. Oh, my game just froze. That was crazy. All right, I'll see you guys later. Yeah, my computer froze. Did it actually break? It's still working on my side. But my computer froze for a second. I don't know why. Let me see, actually. I did not have an unstable event. Okay, cool. All right, bye, guys.